I can make them seem. Are we ready to start?
Recording in progress.
Okay. I'm going to call tonight's meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Wall.
Here.
Mayor Matsumoto Wright.
Here.
Councilmember Ryan.
Here.
Councilmember Page.
Present. Councilmember
Sonmore. Councilmember Murray.
Present.
And Councilmember Woodard asked to be excused.
To excuse?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to excuse Councilmember Woodard. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? He is excused. Okay, next on our agenda is the public comment. Do we have any public comment? Oops.
We had two people who signed up to give public comment online, but I do not see them online. In person, we have Susan Kuhn. You'll have 5 minutes at the podium.
Good evening, Council and Mayor Pro Tem. I'm Susan Kuhn, and I'm a 30-year resident of Mountlake Terrace. So I'm here tonight to ask you to support and advance the Urban Forest Management Program. So how did we get acquainted with this Mountlake Terrace Urban Forest Management Plan? Well, about 2 years ago, our modest but mighty resident, Audrey Meyer, decided to apply for a Department of Natural Resources grant. She partnered with Laura Reed, who at that time was a city stormwater manager. The two were successful and landed about a $120,000 grant. They proceeded with input from several city employees to select a global urban forestry consultant group named Planet Geo. The goal was to document and assess the present and future status of Mountlake Terrace tree canopy. This was to include a working plan of action. This ambition was driven by the current and growing knowledge of the extraordinary benefit of living with a substantial tree canopy. The capture of CO2 and providing clean air. I have a script here. I have to turn page, hang on. The calming mental and emotional effect of tree canopy, the protection of absorbing groundwater, take up the up to 10% cooling effect of tree canopy, and the list goes on and it is lengthy. What is also now known is that trees need human protection, not only our forest and land, but also now in our developing cities. The information provided by Planet Geo Urban Forest Assessment provides very specific information for current and future needs of Mountlake Terrace tree canopy. It lays out current and future work schedules that include budgeting, staffing needs, community involvement, future visions, goals, and strategy for success. To sum it up, it is a treasure trove of specific data for Mountlake Terrace to guide, protect, and enhance its valuable tree canopy. The implementation of the Urban Forest Management Plan would fall into the hands of our newly appointed environmental manager, Patrick Hutchinson. It seems designed by destiny, as he brings a diverse environmental experience to the table. So as residents, as tree lovers, we optimistically say yes and are ready to support our city. Please move this project forward. Thank you.
Next is Audrey Meyer. You have 5 minutes at the podium.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. It's exciting that we're here today to talk about the Urban Forest Management Plan. It's been nearly 2 years since Laura Reed and I started watching the informational webinars for the DNR grant that funded this plan. You know my commitment to trees. I think you know the community's commitment to trees, but let's just review that. This UFMP or plan had community members' input from the grant application, the consultant selection, creating the vision, mission, and goals, the plan's content, even selecting photos in the plan. Resident Susan Kuhn and I gave input throughout the process to the fabulous city staff and the wonderful consultants who put so much into this. And it was a great experience working with the city, Planet Geo, and Starboard Environmental. But Susan and I weren't the only residents involved. RPAC, DEIC, and the Planning Commission weighed in. RPAC tweaked the mission and vision statement, and we had almost 400 responses from community members over 2 surveys that informed the plan. An impressive result. It even impressed the community engagement consultant. More evidence of community engagement with trees is that our parks are where we get the highest level of volunteerism, particularly through work to protect and plant trees. We're 8 times above the national average of volunteerism in urban forestry and 2 times the state average. Knowing this level of community interest, the plan proposes the Tree Ambassador Program. It's like the Community Ambassador Program, but focused on trees. By encouraging further community engagement, we make a happier, healthier, and safer community. The community values our trees and our urban forest as demonstrated through the words and actions of our residents. And when we value something, we need to enact and follow through on a plan for its care. I urge you to pass this plan and fund it so we can see the plan through. The more we care for our urban forest, the more it will take care of us. Thank you.
We have our online commenters. So first is Adam. You'll have 5 minutes to speak.
Okay. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Okay. So with the new school year starting, I'm left thinking about how 5 years ago schooling was done remotely in order to protect children and teachers from COVID-19. These days, school is back to in-person, despite wastewater data showing that there's actually more COVID circulating now than there was during the time period when schools were remote. So that means one of 2 things. Either safety measures were implemented to make schools safe for kids and employees, or we're shoving kids and employees unprotected into buildings full of a deadly disabling vascular disease. Unfortunately, it's the second one. As I mentioned 2 weeks ago, we need to reassess how we think about safety and shift our focus from so-called crime to the #1 daily threat to everybody's life and well-being, the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. While both the Biden and Trump administrations have aggressively dismantled the testing and reporting apparatus in order to create a false narrative that the pandemic is a thing of the past, the pandemic rages on, killing and disabling. While most people are pretending that the pandemic is over, or that COVID is mild, or that they keep getting some sort of cold for some reason, the pandemic rages on, killing and disabling. Viruses, unfortunately, cannot be defeated by data manipulation, denial, or comforting lies. I want to be very clear. This wasn't, isn't, and will never be a mild virus, even if it may frequently present itself similarly to a cold in the acute phase of the disease. Similar to HIV and polio, which also initially presented similarly, the acute infection isn't the real story. It's a Trojan horse for what happens afterwards. Each COVID infection has a significant chance, more than 1 in 4, of causing new long-term health conditions and disabilities. And each time you get reinfected is a roll of the dice or worse. Damage is cumulative. It's not a respiratory disease. It's a multi-system vascular disease that causes damage to all organs, blood vessels, and the blood itself. The infamous post-COVID brain fog and losses of taste and smell are literally brain damage. This is a disease that damages the immune system, reactivating latent infections and leaving you more susceptible to other diseases and COVID itself going forward. It's a disease that causes blood clots, strokes, heart attacks, diabetes, Parkinson's, dementia, Alzheimer's, and more. It reactivates, accelerates, and causes cancer. None of this is rare. Over 400 million people throughout the world have long COVID, and is now the leading chronic illness in children, having surpassed asthma, which yes, COVID also causes. We're in, with no exaggeration, the greatest mass disabling event in human history, and we're only 5 years into it. I'm asking the town to break from the denial that's gripping the society and start taking concrete measures to make our schools safe. Build Corsi cubes for each classroom or install HEPA air purifiers in order to remove the virus from the air. Upgrade ventilation in schools so that the virus doesn't spend all day accumulating in the air like smoke, which everyone then breathes in. Purchase, distribute, and mandate the wearing of N95 masks so that people aren't constantly putting the virus into the air in the first place. All of these things should have been prerequisites for transitioning back to in-person schooling in the first place, and it's absolutely criminal that they weren't. And we're all suffering for it. It's been proven repeatedly that schools are the #1 driver of COVID transmission in the community. A healthy society would be moving heaven and earth to protect its children and everyone from being repeatedly infected by a disease like this. But instead, our town, like the rest of society, is doing literally worse than nothing. It's pretending the danger doesn't exist while allocating money and resources that could be spent fighting it to actively harmful non-solutions to issues that pale in comparison. Yes, I'm talking about flock cameras again. Like COVID, Mountlake Terrace should be fighting to get flock out of our community, not needlessly inviting it in. Time will pass and more children will get long COVID, and the children who have long COVID now will turn into adults with long COVID. That is, if it doesn't kill them first. What will the town's response be when they inevitably start asking, why didn't you protect us? Why did you force us into buildings full of the disease that disabled us? The denial won't and can't last forever. Let's clean the air and prevent needless suffering. Thanks.
We have one more who registered to comment online, and that's Jillian. You'll have 5 minutes.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to come on here tonight to talk briefly about community safety. I've been a resident of this town for 10 years and I really love living here. I feel like it's a safe place with a strong sense of community. I love seeing the same people on my walks every day. Recently, I've really loved seeing people share their bumper crops in cardboard boxes on the sidewalk for just like free fruit, free plums. We're just minutes from a big city, but Mountlake Terrace feels like a small town where people look out for each other. It's really nice. But when I learned the city was considering signing a contract with Flock, at first I was confused. Why would a low crime city like ours need a surveillance system? And why would we use a company that has links to ICE in a time when human beings are being monitored, stalked, and torn from their homes and families illegally by a government that acts above the law? And the more I thought about it, I started to get kind of mad because I learned that many citizens are against this contract and the council approved it anyway. It's been a really frustrating and disappointing time for a lot of us in this town. A system like Flock does nothing to build community. In a time when this country desperately needs compassion, unity, and community, a dystopian surveillance system only serves to create division, fear, and paranoia. So, really, tonight, the only reason why I'm coming on here is to thank the council members who have chosen to vote against it. That's Aaron Murray, Steve Woodard, and now William Page. To William Page specifically, thank you for having the wisdom and courage to take in new information and change your vote based on facts. That's what real leadership is, and it's a rare quality. I hope and expect the rest of the council to follow suit. It's what a community like ours deserves. Thank you.
That's it for those comments, and any comments submitted in writing have been forwarded to council.
Next is the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. Just a couple of things to mention tonight. First, our next community conversation is scheduled for October 2nd at the Senior Center. So we're going to engage with the folks down there and invite people down, have a meal, and stay for lunch. It should be a great time. That's led by Carolyn here, our Deputy City Manager, and does a great job with that program. I also wanted to mention that we had WAGFest last weekend, and there was an estimated 3,000 people that came to enjoy Mountlake Terrace. It was awesome. It was a lot of fun. Don't have that estimate, but 3,000 people, it was really good, and I'm very happy to see that. Also wanted to mention that LTAC, the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee, application period opened on Wednesday, yesterday on the 10th, and will run through October 22nd. And we hope to see some good applications for events next year. And that's all I have to report. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Does anyone have any? Councilmember Murray?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Manager. A question about LTAG. I know we did a kind of a new thing for us in terms of having an info session that helped groups who maybe haven't been through that application process before better understand kind of what it's all about. Do we have resources for folks who weren't able to make that we can point them towards in terms of if a group is, so WAGFest was new this year, that was, you know, an organization or an event, I think, that applied for LTAG funds this last year. Is there something we can point them towards if people want to think about other new ideas or maybe building on ideas that are already going on in the community?
Yeah, we did have a press release about that, about the resources, and I believe the resources are hosted on our website, but we can highlight that for folks that are interested to learn more.
Awesome. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilmember Sonmore?
Just how much funding is in that pool of money, and will this be the last year that we have LTAC?
So the budgeted amount this year is $50,000, the same as it was last year. And as far as LTAC continuing, we have a couple of options there. As many folks know, our overnight lodging establishment is being redeveloped into organic, affordable housing that's close to our new light rail station. But with that, the LTAC revenue stream, that LTAC revenue stream goes away. We are looking at different options, and our city attorney has reviewed potential options and looking how we can continue that committee so that we can allocate funds in order to have events that draw people into Mountlake Terrace like WAGFest.
Can you explain why we went from $25,000 to $50,000 when our budget is what it is?
Yes, we proposed an increase because one of the things, I can't quote it verbatim because I don't have it in front of me, but one of the council's adopted strategic goals is to invite more folks into our community and have additional efforts. Our proposed budget, my proposed budget for the city, increased that budgeted amount from 25,000 to 50 in order to attract more residents, or excuse me, more visitors to Mountlake Terrace to meet that council adopted goal. It was part of the budgeting process for the current budget term, 2025 and 2026, that was adopted by council.
And is this the only money we have available for Terrace if they apply?
So,
or whatever they're calling themselves?
yes, well, that's where the money has traditionally come from for Terrace and for other events.
Oh, it's not traditionally for Terrace in the past, because Jerry Smith, our former mayor, his family had that, and it's I guess if we want to look at it, it's been primarily for the arts in Terrace because they're usually the ones that only apply.
Correct.
And we always limited, but the main goal of that was they had to find sources from other places before they could apply. And so sometimes we gave the art hardly any because we didn't feel like they did enough to look at other places to get money. So they went to Snohomish County, and after they did that, we saw how advanced they were on going out and getting money for equipment and different things like that. But so is that one of the reasons it's up to $50,000? There's not going to be any other monies available to have that event next year?
I don't know what other organizations would give to an event. I know what the city has available to promote and establish events in our community. As far as the money that goes from, or used to go to Tour de Terrace, yeah, that organization, my understanding, is no longer going to operate. So we're looking at other ways to invite residents to come into town and enjoy what we have to offer.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you. So now we're going to move on to the review of the ordinance adopting urban forest management plan with our stormwater program manager, Patrick Hutchins. Is this your first time? Welcome.
Make sure I'm lined up with the mic there. Evening Mayor Pro Tem, Council. Real pleasure to be joining you for my first time here in Mountlake Terrace. I started, ironically enough, on Earth Day back in April, so I've been taking my extensive experience of 4 months with the city and leveraging it towards trying to live up to the very large shoes of Laura Reed, who I know for 8 years was an incredible resource to the community for environmental practices and is a legend in the stormwater community outside of the city as well. But I wanted to introduce tonight our city's first ever urban forest management plan for your consideration and approval to move forward on a vote. I'm also joined by Matt Urmson tonight on Zoom, who is our consultant with Planet Geo, who you heard from those amazing comments from Susan and Audrey, thank you very much, was our consultant along with Starbird Environmental on developing the plan. So he's going to give kind of an overview presentation with a little bit of support from me if there are questions. We'll have time for conversation and questions, and then I'm going to represent some information on some potential costs. We're not actually asking for any budgetary approval for this round. We just want to focus on the urban forest management plan itself, and then we'll be coming back to you later in the year or early next year with a budget amendment to fund the plan. But I wanted to kind of continue some of the work that Laura had done presenting some of that information on potential costs so that we can keep those in mind as we're going forward, and then update those fully. As we all know, the economic conditions have changed a lot in the last several months, so I want to make sure those numbers are as up to date as possible when we finally go to the floor on those. So just to kind of give an overview of what the UFMP is, I know you've all seen it, but it's a guidance document similar in scope to the Stormwater Comprehensive Plan, which was passed earlier this year. So it has a 5 to 10 year document lifespan, lays out concrete goals for retaining and even growing the city's urban forest, with strategies for achieving those goals and specific metrics for measuring success. Like as you've seen, it's created in collaboration with community among the different city departments, and I would even be willing to say that it's kind of one of Laura's last gifts as a staff member to the city. Although I'm sure she'll be around again, just in a different context. In addition, the city's Recreation and Parks Advisory Commission and the Planning Commission have already received presentations on the plan, and both have given the recommendation that council adopt it. And with that, I will turn it over to Matt to give us a little bit of an overview on the plan itself.
Thanks, Patrick. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me. I'm excited to share Mountlake Terrace's first ever urban forest management plan. This plan is a blueprint for how the city can protect and grow its urban forests to support health, resilience, and quality of life for generations to come. I'm Matt Ermson, an urban forestry planner with Planet Geo and the project manager for this work. I'll dive into my qualifications a bit more in a couple slides, so let's begin. Here's what we'll cover this evening. I'll begin with a brief overview of why urban trees matter, not just environmentally, but economically and socially. Then I'll walk you through what we've learned from robust data analysis and public engagement. From there, we'll explore the plan's 5 core goals and the actions associated with each. And finally, I'll outline what implementation looks like and how City Council's support is essential, not only for adoption, but for ensuring the long-term success of Mountlake Terrace's urban forest program through policy alignment, funding, and accountability. And then we'll end, as Patrick said, with some time for questions. So as I mentioned, I'm Matt Ermson. My background includes wildlife ecology, pest management, tree risk assessment, water efficient landscaping, and wildfire resilience. At Planet Geo, we partner with cities to advance sustainable urban forestry, helping communities collect data, create policy, and manage their trees through planning and software solutions. This project was made possible by funding from the Washington Department of Natural Resources and strong city leadership. So a big thank you to Laura Reed and Patrick Hutchins. And while that support is essential, the long-term success of this plan and your urban forest ultimately depends on the engagement and stewardship of Mountlake Terrace's residents. And so, as Susan gave a good intro, urban trees are more than just decoration. They clean our air, they manage stormwater, they lower energy bills, and improve mental health. Trees are essential infrastructure that make cities more livable. And you can see on the screen some of those high-level things. We'll dive into some of these benefits more as we proceed. So what we learned from the data and community. As part of this project, we completed a citywide street tree inventory in 2024, identifying 6,830 publicly managed trees. We also conducted a canopy assessment, which showed 32% canopy cover citywide. It's important to note that this inventory only includes publicly managed street trees, which are just one part of the city's broader urban forest. That also includes trees in parks, natural areas, private yards, and commercial properties. So while this data helps us identify key trends, those trends may not reflect the full picture across all landscapes. But that being said, the inventory provides a strong baseline. So as we can see, 73% of inventoried trees are in good or excellent condition, which sets us up well for long-term success. The data also shows our urban forest is relatively young. Around 70% of the trees are smaller than 12 inches in diameter. So that presents a lot of growth potential, but it also means we need consistent, proactive maintenance to ensure they survive and thrive. On the other end, only 7% of trees are over 24 inches in diameter, which means we're not yet seeing the full ecological benefits that larger mature trees provide in this population. Lastly, we found that the street tree population is heavily dominated by just 2 species, maple and cedars, which together account for nearly 40% of all trees. And that lack of diversity increases vulnerability to pests, disease, and climate stress, and signals the need for strategic diversification in future plantings. Mountlake Terrace's urban forest delivers substantial value, not just aesthetically, but environmentally and economically. As mentioned, those trees intercept stormwater, filter air pollution, sequester carbon, and provide shade that reduces heat and energy use. Citywide, when we account for both public and private trees, our canopy provides over $2.5 million each year in environmental benefits. And that's a direct return in public health, climate resilience, and infrastructure cost savings. The street tree population, while just a portion of the total forest, contributes over $121,000 annually in services. And you can see these numbers broken down on the screen with the citywide canopy benefits on the right and the inventoried tree benefits on the left. The key takeaway here is that investing in tree care and canopy growth is not just about beauty, it's a strategic investment in the city's environmental health and long-term cost savings. So we also identified some key challenges. Like all infrastructure, our urban forests face real and growing pressures. Climate change, pests, invasive species, limited planting space, and budget constraints all impact our ability to protect and grow the canopy. Our analysis identified several emerging pest and disease risks, and we'll just cover a couple of them here. Bronze birch borer, which is already present in the city, could cause losses of over $75,000 in trees. Fur engraver beetle could result in over $2.5 million in tree value loss if left unmanaged. And emerald ash borer, which isn't in Mountlake Terrace yet, but is present in the region, is a very large threat. It has decimated ash tree populations across the United States, so proactive planning is essential. We also observed a number of invasive plants, including tree of heaven, English holly, English ivy, cherry laurel, and Portugal laurel. These crowd out native trees and reduce habitat value and provide lower benefits than native species or other better adapted tree species. Like all cities, Mountlake Terrace is experiencing development pressures. Urban development creates conflict between trees and infrastructure. To address this, the plan recommends design solutions like silvicells, root barriers, and structural soils, all of which improve tree survivability in constrained spaces and reduce hardscape conflicts like the heaving of sidewalks, cracking of pavement. Budget limitations are another common challenge among municipalities. And we can see on the screen there, Mountlake Terrace's current urban forestry budget is around $108,000, which comes out to about $5.07 per resident spent on urban forestry spending or on urban forestry. It's the 5th lowest among 16 peer cities that we benchmarked. And for comparison, of those similar cities, the average is about $11.50 per capita spent on urban forestry. The Washington state average is about $11.05, and the national average is $12.26 per capita spent on urban forestry. So this funding gap makes it even more important that we work efficiently, partner strategically, and plan proactively. Then we also identified canopy equity and canopy change as another challenge. While Mountlake Terrace has a tree equity score of 87 out of 100, we did find a small correlation between lower canopy and higher populations of residents of color or households in poverty. And while it's not as pronounced as in some cities, it is still something the city should be aware of and work to mitigate. Between 2019 and 2023, overall canopy coverage remained steady at 32%, but that kind of masked some changes. Losses occurred along major corridors such as the interstate and the light rail, and then new development sites, while gains were made in parks and some residential areas. And since most existing canopy and planting potential lies on residential property, those areas are critical to future success. The plan's vision is a city where all residents benefit from a thriving urban forest, where trees support health, beauty, and environmental quality across every neighborhood. Achieving this means investing in equitable tree distribution, maintenance, and education. So to achieve that vision, we've organized the plan into 5 goals: engage, maintain, grow, retain, and know. Our framework uses these 5 interconnected goals, with each goal feeding the next. Engaging residents supports better maintenance, which enables sustainable growth, retention, and informed management, strengthening the urban forest over time. Each goal includes strategies and actions tailored to Mountlake Terrace's needs, with specific recommendations and considerations for implementation. The engage goal is all about strengthening community stewardship and building a culture of care. We aim to expand programs like tree ambassadors, recognize tree stewards, and increase public participation through education, volunteerism, and outreach. Mountlake Terrace already has a highly engaged community, and this goal builds on that strength. And as Audrey mentioned, Mountlake Terrace residents played a key role in shaping this plan. Through our benchmarking exercises of peer Tree USA cities, we showed that Mountlake Terrace stands out in community engagement. Volunteer participation here is well above average, with over 2,793 volunteer hours. We expected to see a high-level engagement with the community, and we were not disappointed. So by implementing the recommended strategies, such as citizen science, education campaigns, and incentive programs, the city can grow capacity, increase tree retention on private property, and help meet its canopy goal. Keeping the community informed and involved in UFMP progress fosters a sense of ownership, which is essential for long-term success and sustainability of the urban forest. The maintain goal is all about ensuring proactive, consistent care for the city's public trees, extending their lifespan, improving public safety, and maximizing the benefits they provide. As part of this goal, we've introduced a recommended structured pruning cycle based on industry standards. Trees larger than 6 inches in diameter are scheduled for maintenance every 7 years, while smaller trees are under 6 inches are placed on a 3-year cycle. And this helps the city stay ahead of potential issues and avoid costly reactive work. The inventory also identifies high priority trees and provides cost estimates for contracted work, giving staff a clearer picture of annual needs and helping to inform budget planning and grant requests. Additionally, this goal ties directly back to Engage. By building a trained citizen science program or tree steward network, the city could support young tree care, such as structural pruning, at the ground level, which would increase capacity while reducing costs. The GROW goal focuses on expanding tree canopy in areas that need it most. To reach our target of a 4.5% canopy increase by 2050, the city plans to plant at least 137 trees each year. And these are in addition to mitigation plantings, which are identified as part of the tree maintenance cycle discussed in the maintain goal. These 137 trees don't have to be planted only on city property, and by utilizing the Engage goal, they can be distributed across all property types, both private and public. Planting will be prioritized in hotter, more vulnerable neighborhoods with lower existing canopy. These focus areas are identified using the tree equity score and local knowledge of the city's geography, particularly neighborhoods near the interstate and light rail corridor. Strategic planting in these locations supports climate resilience, equity, and long-term urban forest health. Unfortunately, we can't plant our way out of canopy loss. Retaining the mature, healthy trees we already have is critical. The retain goal focuses on protecting existing trees, especially large ones that provide the greatest ecological and community benefits. Survey responses showed mixed support for a tree removal permit system. About half of respondents were in favor, and support increased when exemptions for dead or hazardous trees were clarified. This tells us that education and transparency will be key to building broader support. So rather than jumping straight into regulation, this goal takes a phased strategic approach. It introduces a voluntary tree removal notification system and encourages residents to map significant or heritage trees. These early steps will help raise awareness, build public trust, and give the city time to develop the internal capacity needed for future permitting. By taking a data-driven and community-informed path, the city can lay the groundwork for stronger protections over time without overwhelming staff or residents. And finally, the no goal. The no goal is all about closing the feedback loop. It focuses on using data and monitoring to inform decisions, measure progress, and adapt over time. By consistently tracking metrics like tree plantings, removals, canopy change, and community participation, the city can stay responsive and accountable. Regular updates to the inventory and canopy assessment ensure we're not just setting goals, but also measuring success in meaningful ways. This data also supports the other goals. It informs how we engage the public, where we need to grow or retain trees, and how we allocate resources. In the plan, we've included benchmarks and targets that give the city a clear way to track implementation and adjust course when needed. Knowing is what keeps this plan dynamic, effective, and rooted in real outcomes. So how do we get there? Successfully implementing this plan will take coordination across multiple city departments. It requires regular updates to data, alignment with other city initiatives, and clear systems for tracking progress and reporting back to the community. While the roadmap is clearly laid out in the plan, realizing its full potential will take collaboration from staff, partners, and the community alike. The Environmental Programs Manager will lead implementation, coordinating across departments and ensuring consistency with the city's broader sustainability and planning goals. RPAC, serving as the city's tree board, has a vital role in this effort, helping keep the community engaged, recommending priorities, and supporting efforts to secure funding and staff capacity. And then we'll also continue working with external partners like DNR and local organizations to amplify the impact and build long-term momentum. Success means a healthier, more diverse urban forest with greater equity and canopy distribution, more engaged residents, and a clear structure in place to maintain and grow tree benefits over time. This plan is the beginning of a long-term investment in Mountlake Terrace's green infrastructure. It's a roadmap to a healthier, more resilient, and more equitable urban forest, but its success depends on continued community support. We encourage you to champion this plan, share it widely, and help sustain the momentum we've built. Whether it's promoting tree programs, supporting planting initiatives, or simply spreading the word, every action helps. This is a living document meant to grow and adapt alongside the city. With your support, it becomes more than a plan. It becomes a shared vision rooted in community values and brought to life by collective action. This is a comprehensive and realistic plan designed to guide progress over time, not overwhelm the city with annual funding obligations. It's a scalable roadmap, adaptable to future budgets and staff capacity. We've done the due diligence. The plan was shaped by community input, refined through feedback from both the Recreation and Parks Advisory Commission and the Planning Commission, DIEC. Their feedback has been thoughtfully incorporated to ensure this plan reflects Mountlake Terrace's goals and values. The plan was also reviewed by the Department of Natural Resources. It's important to remember this is Mountlake Terrace's first ever urban forest management plan. It won't solve every issue overnight, but it builds the foundation for a stronger, more resilient urban forestry program. This is about progress, not perfection, and putting the right pieces in place to grow success over time. Plans like this are typically recommended for adoption once this level of collaboration and review has taken place, and we feel we've met those standards. The plan is ready, the community support is strong. Let's move forward and put it into action. Are there any questions?
Okay, do we have any questions?
Did you have one?
Councilmember Sodmore?
First, thank you for being here from Park and Rec and supporting the trees. I have one question, and I appreciate the presentation. I have an example of something that always kind of perplexes me. We have a car wash going in on 44th, and Laura Reed showed us I think it was 4 or 3 on the main road, these beautiful, beautiful trees. And of course, they needed to be trimmed down because they were going in the wire, but they're absolutely gorgeous trees built up right against the sidewalk. And when they tore down the house, the old law firm that had originally been a resident house, they scraped it clean, and I'm assuming that they're going to be putting trees back up, but they'll probably be very small trees that will get pruned down to nothing. Why couldn't we have left those original trees there? I understand that the builders want to start from a fresh start, and they want to put their own landscaping in there, and then we have to think of the tree canopies, and then we've got to think of the roots. But every time I see us build something, we scrape it down to nothing, and then we're supposed to have the trees come back. But the trees that we put in there never get to where they were once before. I look out my back window and all I see is fir trees, and I know eventually they'll all start coming down, and there's no plan to replace those. And walking through the park and Bicentennial, I noticed some of the trees we planted, at least 7 are dead, and we talked about it out at Park and Rec, and they're fir trees. So my main question is, could you just kind of go over how we enforce this, and is there anything else we can do when we're looking at building? Because it seems like the burden will be in the future, since we now can put ADUs on our yards, we have less space to put trees, so a lot of that burden will be to keep our trees in the park. I know 137 trees is a great start. Of those, probably 20% of them won't make it, but we have to make strides in the right direction. Do you think this plan goes far enough? And what kind of enforcement will happen to keep this plan going?
Matt,
Sorry, I keep on looking up at him. There's so many people up there.
I can take that one. So I can't speak to what the exact plans were regarding the trees on the property that's being developed into the car wash, just because I wasn't involved in that process. I know as far as tree protection standards go, we do have specific protections in place for trees over a certain diameter. Yeah, there are options for paying fee in lieu instead of keeping those trees, or replacing them on site with a certain number of trees. So as the diameter of the tree increases, the more trees have to be replaced if you're going to remove it. The need to remove trees on construction sites is complex. Sometimes it's related to access for equipment, worker safety, and then also sometimes it's related to how utilities will be relocated as the system, the new system comes online. So I can't speak to that one specifically, but I know we do review tree ordinance components as we do design review for our projects. So that's part of our engineering department. And I work very closely to Lucas, who does most of that work. So we're constantly in communication about that. The fee in lieu ability does put money into our tree fund, which is a relatively new fund that was approved by council. And that fund can be used for a variety of things, but all of which are designed to support the urban forest. So we can utilize monies in that fund for planting new trees. We can use it for paying for staff support. So those are kind of those systems in there. This plan itself, one of the possible recommendations is that full tree permit. So that would be, we have a full system anytime someone wants to remove a tree on a property in the city. They have to go through a full process of assessing the trees, providing information to the city confirming and approving that removal. We currently don't really have the staffing for that. So one of the things that Matt mentioned in that retain goal was that kind of phased approach. So we know that people who live in Mountlake Terrace really care about their trees. And so we think if we can start with an engagement component of working with developers to understand that preserving large trees is critical to people who want to move to Mountlake Terrace, and that they will be able to be more successful in when they redevelop their areas. If they are treed, it continues to preserve that character, because folks could go to other places if they want to move somewhere where all the trees have been cut down, right? So there's a engagement component of that. And my background's in community engagement and environmental and outdoor education. So I've worked for nonprofits for most of my life, so I've gotten pretty good at doing a big lift with not very much money. So I think there's a lot of opportunity in that in terms of in genuinely collaborating. So but because the plan has those specific metrics that Matt mentioned, we can kind of every 2 years reassess the canopy and see if we're losing trees in places that we don't want to be, or at a rate that we don't think is appropriate as a community, or both, and then we can advance to the next phase in the graduated enforcement. So beginning with that general education and technical assistance, moving up into a voluntary and then potentially a mandatory removal notification, and then moving to that full tree removal permit. So the plan doesn't mandate any of those things at this moment, but like Matt mentioned, it's a foundation for us to give us the space to make sure that we can protect those resources if we determine that the efforts that we're putting in now are not enough. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, kind of. It's never enough, but you know, it's a start, and you gave us a wonderful presentation about yourself too. And I'm really glad you're with your city, our city at Park and Rec. It's just, this is one of the things that I think that volunteers help spur this on. When we had the event down at Ballinger, I still have my fir tree in a pot, and it's surviving. We gave them out there for free, and then, you know, having the free tree giveaway, people love that, and I know that comes with a cost. But what I've noticed with Park and Rec is it's the volunteers there that are really promoting, and I know one of the things that helps the most is individually talking to a homeowner on what would be best. That's why I haven't started my trees, because I'm thinking, okay, what's the best? Because I lost all my trees because they went into the sewer system, and they all had to be cut down, so I have to make sure not to plant them there. But I just want to acknowledge too, it's the volunteers that will really help keep a plan like this. And keep up the education, because it is so important that trees are one of the things that can't talk back, right? So it's just easy to cut things down than to preserve them. But I'm hoping this works. I hope it's the right step in the right direction. We've been known for trees, especially cedar trees, Cedar Way, all the different things. But I'm glad to see this plan, and I hope we can continue to fund it and make it very successful.
Councilmember Page?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Patrick, Matt, for putting this together and giving us a nice starting point, if you will, to what we need to look at. I only really have two questions, and one was a question that you all didn't really touch on, but it was in the information about the scores, that we came up with, and specifically. What are the scores really saying about MLT? I know in your paper you say, well, because we're small and we're just starting, but what do those scores really say? And more importantly, I think, what are your expectations of where our city can be for a score once we understand what that score really means 5, 10, 20 years in relation to our comp plan?
And this is the tree equity score you're referring to? Okay. Matt, do you have any information you want to take with that first, and then I can follow up?
So in terms of where should Mountlake Terrace be in 10 years in terms of a tree equity score? Everybody wants to see that high number. They think we should have 100 out of 100 in terms of tree equity, but it's all about understanding each individual community. Having a full 100 out of 100 also burdens those neighborhoods in different ways, with the cost of tree care, taking care of older trees. The risk of trees is just as expensive as the cost of not having any canopy. So it's about finding balance, and at 87 out of 100, it's a pretty good score. So maybe just maintaining that while planting trees in those underserved communities, but also helping those communities maintain their older trees that are also going to become a burden to them. There's no right answer for what is the perfect score for a city. It's up to the city to determine what they can maintain, what they can support, what the communities can support.
Okay, thank you. I know I said I had two questions, so I guess I'll get two and a half. To add on to that statement, though, as the tree canopy score increases, in your experience, or if it does increase, as a community such as Mountlake Terrace, which is growing, it's developing, there's going to be a lot more people coming. How much does that really affect the ability for the tree canopy to grow?
It depends on, the rate of development, the rate of clear cutting, and also if measures, those alternatives to clear cutting that we mentioned, such as silvacells, structural soils, root barriers, those things that help prevent infrastructure conflict with tree roots. If those are being implemented, if design plans that promote retaining large trees, so different types of architecture or landscape design that allow those large trees to be retained with the buildings, those are all things that need to be addressed as well, or considered. And we've included those considerations in the plan as part of these goals so that the city can work on implementing those. They're not required to be implemented, but they will help prevent that canopy loss as development occurs. I think, I don't know if I've fully answered that question, Patrick.
Well, I know it's a, progress in motion. I guess that, what I'm thinking is once we get a better understanding of what a tree canopy score feels like for Mountlake Terrace, then at some point we should be having a goal that we can attain that will fall in line with the rest of our comp plan. We know, what we need for housing, over 7,000 houses, we know what we need. We know what it looks like. We know that we are creating codes to enable to do that while at the same time protecting green space. So along with that, we need to make sure that we have, if this goal is important to, everything that Canopy does to the city, then there should be some goal that we are, just like anything else that's measurable, for us to be able to see. I think one of your slides talked about what does success look like. Well, it seems to me that would be part of what success looks like. Are we attaining a goal based upon our entire plan to hit that goal? Because everything else is going to have a goal that we're trying to attain, whether it's, businesses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. My second question, and I'm glad that you talked about yourself and, your community engagement, because I think that when I hear about, and since I've been in the city, when I hear about surveys and community engagement and X amount of people, I think we said 400 respondents on 2 surveys, then I always ask the question, though, did any of those surveyed people come from your heat-zoned, underserved neighborhoods? Because are they providing an input to this, where we're saying that's probably our most help-needed areas, but are they really contributing to what you're hearing about what people want? And where does that strategic plan look like, if it's in place yet, to ensure that they're part of the people sitting at the table to determine where trees should go, how big they are, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah,
Yeah.
as long as that's appropriate. I don't know. Sorry. No, okay. Apologies, sorry. I know our survey respondents did have a bias towards people who self-identified as Caucasian, so that is a bias that is in those data, and I think acknowledging those biases are helpful because they help us understand how we can better serve communities that did not provide that information. So a couple of things that I've been working on since I got here already. I was out at both Juneteenth and National Night Out this year, asking survey questions, not the same as were on this survey, but more general about what folks want to see for Mountlake Terrace, and we saw that trees were a major part of that. And so I really recognized with my background in outreach that being able to show up in the places that people are already operating is absolutely critical. So a couple of areas where Laura was looking at before I got here, and then I was very excited to see when I got here because they were things I was thinking about during my interview process, was engaging with faith-based communities. So working with churches and mosques throughout the city to talk to those folks and see how urban forestry fits within their cultural context, and so that we can highlight if and how these could be beneficial for their needs. I think there's also a lot of opportunity for us to go out into spaces that aren't traditionally thought of as places where you might do surveys. So going out to like grocery stores, especially in those communities that have those lower equity scores, and just giving people the opportunity to say, here's what we're talking about, here's what interests you about it, what do you need? Is this something that's important to you or not? Because they might say it's not, and that's important for us to know too. So I think we can get creative about where I go out and do surveys, how we do surveys, and we can, I know we did provide, I think we did provided survey in multiple languages, Audrey and Matt, that's right, yeah, okay.
Provided English and Vietnamese and Spanish. And then we also did have a demographic question in those surveys with a map of the city. It wasn't broken down by the census block groups, but just kind of larger neighborhoods that Laura and the team had decided upon. So we do have an idea of how many people responded from different areas or different neighborhoods of the city, which we can then overlay with the tree equity map to see where the scores are, who kind of responded from where, to get an idea of that. The Engage goal also has a lot of recommendations on bilingual messaging materials, meeting and working with faith-based organizations, and then meeting people where they are. And talking to them, just like Patrick was discussing. So there are recommendations and strategies laid out addressing this.
No, please.
Just wanted to respond to your other question, Councilmember Page, about the goals. I just want to mention that the plan has very clear goals about growing the canopy 4.5% and maintaining what we have, to Councilmember Sonmore's concerns, the education and so forth. So the strategies there's so many strategies that we would have to implement to do to achieve all of those goals. And that is for your consideration. You know, at the next meeting, we're looking at having a public hearing and having you adopt the plan. So it would be as important as the strategies outlined in your comprehensive plan and similar plans. So.
Well, thank you for your answers. Sometimes I think that if we don't ask the question, we don't know that I knew you was at Juneteenth, we don't know how much work that you're actually putting into something that, again, that is the most help needed, especially if you already have this plan to try to talk to those groups that are already in these underserved areas. It will help us understand what we need to do when we start building, these other buildings and what's going to be needed in order for them to feel like this is a great place to call home if they're going to move here, because we've already started by talking to the people that are here in those areas and tried to improve what they have. So thanks a lot for your answers.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking.
Councilmember Murray?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Patrick. Thanks for being here for the first time officially. So I'm super excited about the plan, excited to have a plan, right? Without a plan, it's really hard to have a cohesive, effort. And I know we've been doing lots of work around trees in various spaces for a long time. But it's really excited to have this put together in a place that really can guide us as we move forward. And I think critically important, particularly as we grow, to think about how we continue to retain and grow our tree canopy. So big thank you to all the folks that have been involved in the process from the beginning. Thank you for you to helping to shepherd it kind of here to this finish line for us. Very supportive generally. There are cost complexities, right? I think that's real, and I think we are not talking about costs tonight, but I think it's an important part of the conversation and recognizing that we have budget limitations and challenges right now that are real. And these are the sorts of things, though, that are important and pay dividends and are investments in ourselves that really the investment now is something that we will see for years and generations to come, and that's really important. And so I don't look forward to figuring out that piece, but I look forward to figuring out how to move this forward, because I do think it's a really important body of work, particularly with where we are as a community in terms of we know more people are going to come to our community. We know we are planning for more folks. We know the important impact of trees. And so I think this is the right plan at the right time, and just appreciate all of the thoughtful intentionality, particularly around the data involved in putting it together. I did have a question, and I would love, if one or both of you could maybe speak to just a little bit about climate change and the impact of climate change on our planning. I think I've been seeing a lot of, kind of articles around, how we've seen the health of long-term trees in our region, be pretty dramatically impacted, right, by our drier summers or hotter summers. And I'm just curious, because we are planning for, the future in such a long time frame, how climate change and kind of what we know about where we are headed, how that kind of was incorporated into the plan.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, do you want to go first and then I can follow up?
Yeah, of course. So as part of the plan, it's in one of the earlier sections. I can't remember right now, but it does address the city's vulnerability to climate change, where we look at the shifting hardiness zones and shifting climate and the predicted models of what Mountlake Terrace is going to look like in about 80 years. The University of Maryland's Environmental Science Center has a great online tool that maps the analog city. So Mountlake Terrace is actually predicted to have a climate similar to Three Rivers, California, in about 80 years, which will drastically change the plant communities that can survive. So we address that, and we discuss in the plan about creating a right tree, right place. So looking at the trees that are going to thrive in 50 years and planting them today. Starting them off now so that in 50 years you have an urban canopy that is still resilient and diverse. And then as also a part of that, we, as I mentioned, my background is in water efficient landscaping. We included sections on what that would look like, how you can prioritize irrigating trees so that they survive and thrive. And maybe not irrigating turf grass, which isn't providing as many benefits. So how those landscapes look, how to start implementing water efficient landscaping. And then we even have a little bit in there that shows kind of the cost savings between a traditional landscape and a more water efficient landscape to help build the argument to move towards that model. And then, Patrick.
Yeah, and we're actually already taking many of the considerations that are in the plan into account in some of our efforts to plant additional trees. So I've been working with Donnell and Selena from Parks to do some more tree plantings on the, hopefully on the interurban trail, and then over on Lakeview Way. And we've been taking into account the fact that those trees are going to live 200 years. Some of our native species live incredibly long times. So western red cedar and Douglas fir in particular are known to live between 800 and 1,000 years on average if they have the right growing conditions. So, planting a tree is leaving 1,000 years legacy potentially. And so we're kind of already utilizing that and thinking about those components in the future. And with my background in environmental education, I've spent a lot of time doing forest ecology projects. And doing restoration plantings. And so I have a good knowledge of how slope aspect, groundwater level, sunlight exposure, wind exposure, how those kinds of things impact trees. So we've got a little bit of that expertise in the city already, and Selena and Donnell are both very experienced in that regard as well. So shout outs to them. But we also are hoping to bring on an arborist who can continue to provide those a little more nuanced perspectives on how to do that. So there are many species that we can plant, and we're kind of already on the process on that. I wanted to address your question regarding funding too. So something that we are planning with this process is that the stormwater benefits of trees have been demonstrated time and time again. We contribute to a program through our stormwater permit called the Stormwater Action Monitoring Program. And it's a collaborative intercity project to do long-term scientific studies to determine what types of best management practices are effective for managing stormwater. And we have kind of historically always known that preserving vegetation is the best BMP, but that hasn't always been quantified. So one of the most recent ones that came out in the latest iteration of the SAM report was that looking at how much stormwater a tree actually absorbs during a rainstorm. So it looked at a series of different native species, measured the amount of rainfall falling on the canopy of the tree, and then measured the amount of water that the tree was moving up into its leaves and then respirating out of the top. And it found that in some species it was 30 to 40%, and in some species it was as high as 60% of the water that falls on the tree. So when we have trees, they're moving about half of the water that falls on the city back up into the air. So we know that they're critical infrastructure for stormwater. And so other municipalities around the country are actually utilizing their stormwater funds to pay for urban forest projects. So we'd like to do that here. And then we know that the stormwater fund is pretty robust right now. So there's a lot of ability to be able to cover these with that. And then as the tree fund grows, as development occurs, and we see those fee and lieu processes come through, we'll also be able to utilize those funds for these same practices. So we're already thinking about some of those things on the staff level. And I have some materials around some potential costs once we get through our questions too. So.
Great. No, thank you. I appreciate both the forward-looking nature of kind of thinking about the right trees for now and for the next 100,000 years, et cetera, as well as, yeah, the thoughts behind. I wasn't sure if that was it or if we were going to talk more about those costs. So I appreciate you just jumping right in and answering that. And then I think the only other thing I would say is I'm a fan of kind of where we're starting this process in terms of like, I think generally where we can educate and incentivize the behaviors we want to see versus limit and, penalize the behaviors we don't want to see. That is definitely my preference. And I think we have a lot of folks who clearly are interested in wanting to do more in this space. And I think that shows from the interest in our street tree program, right? Where when we made trees available and told people where and what the right species to plant was, they're like, yes, please. Like, we'd love to have more trees on our property. I think Ivy League is a great example of people wanting to care for the trees in our community if they're given some kind of guidance and support in doing so. And so I'm really excited about that piece, and I'm hopeful that that will really move the needle and do a lot of what we are setting goals around ultimately. And so I have a lot of faith in our community, I guess, particularly in this space. And so I'm excited about that potential to better support them to do the things that collectively I think we all want to do in terms of retaining and growing our tree canopy. So with that, I will stop. But thank you, Patrick. It was very nice to have you here tonight.
All right. Anyone else? Did you want to go?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll reserve most of my comments in support of the plan for next week when we have when we vote on it. But I did want to, since this is our first opportunity to welcome you, Patrick, to the city. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining our city. We're excited to have you continue carrying the torch that the Lord did such a great job getting this program off the ground. Thank you to Audrey and Laura for really bringing this program to us. The great work that's gone on between you guys, our team, the consulting team. I'm really excited to be where we are and be in a position to be able to adopt a great, well thought out plan. So look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so I have a few questions. First of all, whenever I'm in other cities, I actually look at the trees and how they're planted and whether or not their roots are cracking the sidewalks and so forth. And then I look at what kind of tree it is, and I'm thinking, why do cities make mistakes on planting the wrong kind of trees? And hopefully we're going to plant the right kind. We're going to make, because AWC had a tour of the city that we're in, and we looked at all the trees that were in the public places. And I learned a lot about that. The other thing is I have a mature tree in my yard, and it does cost a lot of money to keep it up. I worry about the people who can't afford that, and so they're going to, their trees will be they'll be not maintained well, and then they're going to start dying because they're not maintained, but it costs money to do that. And also the areas in town that is occupied by people who are not, who can't afford to plant trees or maintain trees. Hopefully those 137 trees that we're going to be planting every year, hopefully a portion of that, because we've done the tree giveaways in the past, that hopefully we'll continue to do tree giveaways. And then helping the people how to plant it, how to help it grow, and just to keep going around encouraging them to do what's good for their trees, because you can plant a tree and do nothing to it, and then it may grow to a full height or it might die. So if we're going to put any money into this, I would like to see it be a successful program.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of considerations related to it. You were talking about that we're working on currently, and the plan really emphasizes us to continue doing. Matt mentioned those structural soils, those silvicels. So we've been working on updates to our engineering design manual that we hand out to developers. And one of the areas that we looked at was how they're placing street trees. So we're looking at utilizing root barrier right now to prevent it from going sideways and cracking the sidewalk and encouraging the tree to dig down. And then we're also looking at if it's feasible to leave the ground underneath the root ball as it's planted uncompacted. So that's a major part of why trees die in roadways, is you have to compact the soil to be able to get the to get it stable enough to drive a vehicle on or to support heavy traffic. And so if we can make sure that there are spaces under the trees that the roots can reach into and not essentially run into a concrete wall, then that will give them capacity to survive. So that's kind of we continuously update the manual. And so we'll see how those things how successful those are being, and then continue to utilize those other resources like silvacells and suspended paving that are also demonstrated to be able to keep those trees alive. So we definitely will be working in that regard. And then one of the things I'm planning on doing probably as a project over the winter is creating an urban forestry page within the stormwater section on our website, so that folks have a central place to access resources. There's a lot of information out there, but it's kind of distributed and often put in technical terms. And I think if we had a series of resources and possibly even some videos on how to do those tree care components that people could access centrally, then that would be really helpful and done in plain language, with opportunities for folks to contact me, or if we hire a city arborist, them as well, to be able to come and talk to them. We have when we did the Trees for Terrace program, providing trees, there was our formerly intern, now engineering technician Ethan, was going out and helping support the folks who planted their trees. And a community member, I don't remember what she named it, but she named her tree. And she would call Ethan and ask, like, hey, I'll just say Greta. Greta is looking a little yellow on the west side today. Do you think that's related to something? And so they kind of would work and communicate. And I think those kinds of, they take a lot of time, but they really build major benefits. And as we empower our community members to care for the trees, they understand how to do it. And so if they are out in community and they hear a neighbor or a friend or someone at the grocery store being like, man, my tree is dying, then they can be the one to come and say, hey, I had that same thing and I learned from the city this and this and this. And so we kind of have these expanding ripples of knowledge and understanding. So I think that's kind of the big picture version of how we'll be addressing some of the things that you asked about.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor. Welcome to Mountlake Terrace. Glad you're here. It sounds like we're in a great spot because we have excellent education with you and resources and the people in the RPAC, it sounds like. And we had a lot of experiences. So anything like that, I'm really kind of excited, because anything that has to do with trees or horticulture, I'm excited about. I was with the Mountlake Terrace Garden Club, but we disbanded last year. But I do like horticulture, and so welcome again.
Cool, thank you. You might be excited then to know we have our heritage tree, the giant sequoia, here outside the City Hall. And that heritage tree program has the potential to grow quite a lot and be an opportunity for people to explore some of the kind of more notable species or examples of different trees. And our first individual who expressed interest in having a heritage tree on private property reached out to me a couple weeks ago. So we're going to go out next week and do an assessment and see if it's one that fits within the parameters for the program. So yeah, just wanted to share that that's something that's in the plan and has a lot of room to give us some kind of like walking tour opportunities or ways for the community to be able to engage in observing and understanding exemplary examples of these plants. So.
Great, thank you.
All right, anyone else? All right, I think we've had all our questions answered. Thank you very much for your presentation. And shall we take a 3-minute break? You want to go till 8:30 or no? 8:25. We'll be back at 8:25.
Recording in progress.
Okay. All right, we're back in session. Next on our agenda is the review of the professional services agreement for citywide branding with our Economic Development Manager, Ryan Doss, and Communication and Community Engagement Manager, Sienna Spencer-Marcos.
Well, good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. My name is Ryan Doss. I serve as the city's Economic Development Manager, and here along with me is my co-lead for the project.
Hello, I'm Sienna Spencer-Marcos, Communications and Community Engagement Manager. And joining us from Chicago is Christian Gist. She is the brand strategist for the All Together agency. And she is here just in case you have any questions about this project or the agency. Thanks, Christian.
Awesome. So the purpose of tonight's presentation is to review the proposed professional services agreement with All Together LLC for city branding, identity development, placemaking, and strategic marketing services. That is a handful of buzzwords that essentially says we're looking to partner with a consultant to help create an enhanced brand and identity for Mountlake Terrace. This effort will also guide strategies for placemaking and wayfinding, helping us strengthen our sense of place and make the city more recognizable. And ultimately, this lays the foundation for marketing Mountlake Terrace, promoting our community not only to residents, but also to investors, businesses, and visitors. So our agenda for tonight includes how this project aligns with council goals and the Economic Development Strategic Plan, quick background on how we got here, the scope and timeline of the project budget, and finally staff's recommendation before we dive into discussion. So to kick things off, this project directly supports council's goal of growing a vibrant community. However, it also moves forward the city's economic development strategic plan, which emphasizes enhancing Mountlake Terrace's image as a destination for business. With the guiding notion that a strong brand and marketing effort will help us attract new interest from investors, businesses, and residents alike. And with that, I will pass it to Sienna.
So we developed a request for a proposal to secure an experienced branding and marketing agency to help guide us through this branding project and to advise on a wayfinding strategy for future implementation. This new brand identity is also intended to inform our economic development marketing strategy. Next slide, please. The scope of work will cover a discovery period, research, community engagement, brand development, wayfinding, creative design, and the implementation strategy, along with performance metrics. We released the RFP on June 4th. We received 23 strong proposals from all over the country, including Canada. Our staff selection committee reviewed all proposals and selected the top 5 candidates for interviews. We evaluated the agency candidates according to their design philosophy, their experience and capabilities, their staff and personnel, their approach to the scope of work, and their ability to meet the schedule. Our recommendation is the All Together agency, based on their proven track record, their creative storytelling, inclusive engagement methods, and their background in civic planning.
It's back to me. So who is All Together? They're a Chicago-based design studio made up of communication experts, creatives, and urban planners. The faces you see on the slide are who will be our project team over the next year. And that includes the 2 principals for the firm, and then their brand strategist, Christian, who's joining us virtually again. So their work heavily focuses on community engagement to develop branding and placemaking. As Sienna mentioned, out of the 23 proposals we received, altogether rose to the top. The evaluation committee was impressed by their track record, their inclusive community engagement approach, and their holistic experience in each segment of this project. So their team brings a unique mix of design, marketing, and planning experience, providing us confidence that our brands won't just look good, but it will also translate into real strategies for placemaking, wayfinding, and economic development. So just a little more about them. Altogether, Strength and Specialties showed us strong capacity to help tell Mountlake Terrace's story, not just of where we've been, but where we're headed. But I do want to make clear, this isn't about creating a brand in a vacuum. We are not trying to force an identity that feels inauthentic to the community. Altogether's approach is really rooted in listening, co-creation, and reflecting what's true to Mountlake Terrace. Their engagement strives for joyful experiences for communities and their stakeholders through the built environment, branded communications, and programming that captures spirit of place. Now, next we have just a small snapshot of Altogether's previous work. They have experience with a number of municipalities, organizations, downtown associations, and neighborhood groups from around the country. This was a really big selling point for the evaluation committee of just their expansive experience with, not only cities and municipalities, but also organizations that are focused on supporting businesses and economic development. Back to Sienna.
So the timeline for this project is 10 to 12 months. And altogether has broken up the months into 3 phases, and each phase will have a set of deliverables. Starting with the discovery phase, which will kick us off in October, and that will be the time where Altogether will conduct interviews with stakeholders, staff, and community. They'll be coming here in person, and we'll be meeting with them regularly online. They'll be reaching out to the community and also reading our plans to develop a baseline of where we're at currently. And they'll use that to inform their strategic brand work and their marketing development going forward. They'll continue with brand development and wayfinding system designs with checkpoints along the way with us. And they'll be wrapping it up next summer with the deliverables that we've outlined in the proposal. And those deliverables are, next slide, please. We have 4 goals coming out of this branding project. Number 1 is to develop a cohesive and aspirational city brand to elevate the city and attract development and investment. Number 2 is to deliver a final brand strategy document, which should include the brand narrative, positioning, and placemaking design guidelines. Number 3 is to deliver a brand guide for city staff and external partners to guide with future planning and development. And number 4, Ryan?
Yes, deliver strategic recommendations for economic development marketing efforts. So that kind of rolls right into what I was about to say of, these goals and essentially deliverables will lay the groundwork for our marketing efforts, and that's to help recruit new businesses and investment into the city, especially targeting specialty and destination retail, promoting just overall commercial real estate development, but also supporting tourism initiatives and encouraging shop local programs and initiatives in supporting our small business community. So as stated in the agreement, the total budget for this project is not to exceed a maximum sum of $68,920. This falls just under the amount currently budgeted for in the general fund. Compensation will cover professional services described in the scope, travel through their 3 visits to Mountlake Terrace and project expenses. So there's no additional appropriation required for this. And with that said, staff recommends that the City Council review the proposed professional services agreement with Altogether LLC, and approval for this agreement is scheduled for consideration on the September 18th consent agenda. And we are happy to answer any questions.
All right. Do we have any questions? Councilmember Sonmore?
I have a whole bunch of questions. How come we chose a contractor that lives in Chicago that may have never even been to our city?
Yeah.
Do you want to go for it?
Sure. We cast a net far and wide promoting the RFP, and we are open to really the qualifications were more important to us than the location. There were many marketing agencies that were qualified all across the country and in Canada. And we interviewed local agencies as well, but it came down to that perfect balance between city government, planning experience, creativity, and their creative ideas.
Can you tell me how this is going to be different than the last 2 times that we've done before?
That's a good question. Thank you, Councilmember. I am personally not knowledgeable about the previous efforts from the city. But, you know, what really stands altogether apart and what our approach is right now is having that community engagement aspect, the storytelling that they really excel at, but also creating a more cohesive, consistent brand. So the city has its logo, it has its kind of colors and branding, but it's a little disjointed in how that's put out there, and so we want to be able to clean that up. And
So in the past, we've done a cost analysis on how much it would cost to, if you guys are thinking about changing logos, about how much it would cost and all that. And one of the things that kind of struck me was develop a cohesive and inspirational city brand to elevate the city. Are we saying the city isn't elevated? Is that we have, I'm not sure what that goal is.
So, no, that's absolutely not what we're saying. What we're saying is the branding and the positioning that we have now hasn't necessarily attracted development to the town center that's been approved by council, and the major concept has been approved by council since 2007. So that's 18 years. And we want to make sure that when we go out and try to attract new business development for the transit-oriented development district, that it's cohesive, it's something people automatically recognize, and highlight Mountlake Terrace as a unique place to be.
So it should be easier to attract businesses now that we have the light rail, because that's what we said in the past, is we haven't had the light rail come in. And I know they just had a conference in Texas about developments that a lot of, it was, I think, a month before you started. And one of the issues that came out of that was how many businesses are actually wanting to develop in Washington State. Have we looked at that and looked at how different laws have changed and how much development wants to come into Washington State? That's one of the things, because we've had different things like this before. I mean, we've gone into tons and tons of details before and had many plans, but it's all about attracting that one developer. We had a grocery store that wanted to come in downtown. We had Target that wanted to maybe come in, and those all didn't go because they couldn't consolidate enough land. The homeowners weren't really wanting to give up their properties and different things. Have we looked at how much space that could possibly go to developer right now? Because our main goal is our downtown that we hear so much about, and we did have really good plans for it, and then we had a recession. So I'm just wondering what we're going to look at. Last time we got some rosy pictures, and it didn't go anywhere, and we hired a company out of Spokane, And it sounded all good and nice, but that's why I'm asking, why do you think this will be successful?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And it's interesting, there's a lot of multiple aspects to kind of what you were mentioning of, working with the development community to help attract, commercial or mixed use residential development into the city is a challenge and something we're focused on. We kind of view this project as helping with that marketing effort of just getting Mountlake Terrace's name out there. But it's also kind of multifaceted of, it's not just economic development, it's also communications and community engagement with wayfinding and just having that sense of identity of, the preconceptions of the city in years past and how it's changing. And just trying to help enhance the image as it's laid.
That's, I guess, what I wanted to know. What were those past images that you're trying to fix or address?
So Mountlake Terrace for a long time has been viewed as the more affordable option in our region, and hasn't really attracted the development, not only because of that, but also because the infrastructure wasn't in place. Those things weren't readily available, and the value of the land would not support the type of development that the town center plan contemplates with the infrastructure needs that needed to be put in the ground. So what we're trying to do is change that notion, change that idea of Mountlake Terrace. So the first thing that you hear, or the first thing you think of when you hear the words Mountlake Terrace is, what a great place to be, instead of there are challenges associated with developing there.
So that's one of the things, we looked at all that infrastructure for downtown, and that's why we were going to put everything underground and put certain things on top of buildings. And we actually talked about having another street out here. And now we've decided to let the developer decide if they want to put in a street, where we had planned all the directional streets. A lot of things have gone backwards from when we originally started it in 2008. But the one thing I really want to put out there is Mountlake Terrace is a diamond in the rough, and I get really tired of people telling me how horrible Mountlake Terrace is. We have ugly homes, we have this. I was born and raised here. I don't think Mountlake Terrace is ugly. I think it has some of the nicest people in the world, so I'm very wanting to see the best. And when I hear that things are, we don't have the land structure, we don't have property values and different things like that, to me, it's really getting the right connection with the right developer. We've gone into papers promoting Mountlake Terrace before. We've done a whole bunch of different things, and we've been told in the past what we've done wrong and what we have done right. But a lot of times it's based on economics in the market and who's willing to come into Washington State with different things and higher taxes and higher gas prices and different things that the state has imposed. So I'm really interested to see how this builds up.
Councilmember Page.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I've got a few questions, some for Christian, some for you all. For your steering committee, and it sounds like it's great that you had so many people, so many companies from all over, that was interested in this project. I think that says a lot about the possibilities of MLT, because it could have went on the other way and you didn't get the offers because no one was interested. And I think that's important. But, you made a decision, on altogether. You had a steering team that did the homework. But I'm wondering, has anyone looked at any of the cities that they, are showing you where they've worked and where they've made some changes? Have they had opportunity to speak to any of the city officials about the expectations met or not met?
With their marketing agencies?
Yeah, I mean, they great presentation, but did we have opportunity for any type of boots on the ground, just phone calls and just, the review is a review is a review, but did you have an opportunity to actually talk to, especially any of these cities that might be similar to ours, as to were the expectations met or not met? And if that's a
I
no,
think
that's
we
fine.
did a little bit of comparison with our neighboring cities. But one of our goals with this brand exercise was to be unique, and not look like our neighboring cities.
Well, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about specifically who they worked with, you know, and did we?
Yeah.
Okay, and they have the presentation. They list, I think, what, 7 cities. So, you know, did we get on the horn and, you know, just ask, you know, what did you get what you really expected, or did you get more than what you expected? Is there something missing? Because it is, you know, a moving piece of work. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, we did read testimonials from several of their clients they included in their proposal, and I believe it's on their website as well.
Okay, but we didn't actually call anybody. Okay. The other question I have is, and this is to Kristen. Hi, Kristen.
Hi.
Thanks for being here.
Hello.
How many cities that you've worked with have demographics similar to ours, or will be similar to ours as we grow over the next 10 to 20 years?
I don't know of an exact number, and I'm not saying that to say that there's not a lot. There are a lot, and I think it's a couple different rungs of demographics. So, for cities that are close to or off of a train line, we've worked with probably about a dozen of those. For cities that have different like racial demographics, religious demographics, we've been in those as well. We've worked, you know, intensely with the city of Chicago and also with the surrounding suburbs. We've been, you know, in Florida, North Carolina, and Wisconsin, kind of all over the Midwest and all over the country. So we've, while we haven't worked with Mountlake Terrace before, we have been with a lot of cities and a lot of counties and states that are up against some challenges of yours. You know, you're small and you are authentic, but you want to grow. You want to, you know, highlight the stories of everyday community members and residents and your future and honor your past. But you do want to be kind of focused on the future. So a lot of our work has been with people who are and clients who are facing similar issues. You want to stay true to your past. You want to honor your present. You also want to be focused on the future. And you may be dealing with issues of, you know, wanting to bring in large developers or also wanting to lift up the small businesses and the entrepreneurs that are already there. We've helped instill those programs of just having an entrepreneurship pipeline that supports small business. We've dealt with marketing that not only builds pride in place for people that currently live there, but also makes it a space where visitors, if they're right off the train station, they want to stop, grab a coffee, hang out a little bit, check it out, decide if they want to move there with their family. And we've also dealt with, you know, we want to bring in large investment or change the landscape for housing. And we've been able to do engagement work and placemaking and branding that supports those goals as well.
Okay. And jumping over to, you know, performance metrics and brand impact. And I know our city didn't specify, you know, particular KPIs. They wanted to get recommendations from you. So what type of metrics, KPIs do you anticipate using for what you've come to learn about Mountlake Terrace to determine if, which I think is another subject, but for you to determine if you're being successful or not?
We place a huge emphasis on engagement. And for us, for a lot of our KPIs, our engagement are making sure that we're talking to everyone. A lot of times you may get to a final city brand and people can feel like, you know, I didn't know that process was even going on. No one asked me about it. I didn't hear. And even if you get to the end of the process and you don't maybe agree with the brand personally, just any other resident, if you've known that it's going on, if someone asked you about it, if someone told you about it on the street, you feel that it was a fair process. And so a lot of our engagement focuses on reaching out to people of all ages, whether it's, you know, going to the senior centers or engaging in some family-friendly events, reaching out to faith-based community members, meeting with different community stakeholders and business groups and community organizations leaders, the residents, the historians, the people that, you just got to walk into the local bar to be able to find and to talk to and hear what's important about Mountlake Terrace to them. So a huge focus on us for making sure that we're successful is making sure that we're talking to as many people as we can. And we do that through, surveys, in-person interviews, stakeholder group interviews, discovery sessions. Our discovery and our engagement runs pretty deep. On the other side of that, when we get to the branding process, it's being able to engage a steering committee and the group of stakeholders and say, how are we meeting kind of your goals here and your expectations for this branding process? If it is a branding where you've had branding processes in the past that weren't successful, what was it about those that, didn't meet expectations, and how can we help to make sure that you're getting there, whether it was approval of the concepts, the storytelling, the messaging, or the final logo and color sets that you may want to do. And then from there, it's the brand activation. It's a lot of investment to say, I want to make a new brand. I want to have a logo. I want to make sure that this partners with community partners. So how are we going to activate this brand in a way that makes sense for all of you? And so we build out that brand strategy piece as part of our deliverables to make sure that we're not only like leaving you with all the assets and the new things, refined things, but we're telling you how you can actually use it in the future.
Okay, thank you for all that information. Really appreciate it. Last question for you all. I think it was last week or the week before, it all kind of blends together, but you was in front of us talking about FIFA, right? And the brand that we need to create for the city, because World Cup is coming, to Mountlake Terrace. And more importantly, how does that brand that gets developed for that event sustains itself to go into the future for Mountlake Terrace? So how is what they're going to do going to blend into what we heard a couple of weeks ago? Is it going to be part of that, or is this going to be, or will the marketing be something completely different?
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. That's, very timely with the World Cup coming up next summer. I do kind of want to separate this project from the World Cup specifically. I think during Altogether's work and their discovery and some of their recommendations to us, we can have some great ideas to utilize for the World Cup. But I do want to make sure that, that event-specific marketing that might occur is different from a more long-term strategy and vision for the city.
And I think that's important, and, kind of keeping them, but I hope that, we see that they're not two separate things, because, the death of all cities that prepare for giant events like that, whether it's the Olympics or the World Cup, is that they plan for the World Cup, but they don't plan for the day after the World Cup. And all of that information and all that money and all that infrastructure work that was done for the World Cup is now it's just sitting isolated because you got something else going on. And now you got this stale piece of bread, just sitting at the table that no one has a plan for because they didn't incorporate it into the future plan. Okay?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Thank you.
Yeah, one of the things we talked about before the RFP was even issued, before the Economic Development Plan was even issued, is not doing something like the 1984 LA Olympics, where, in 2004, some of those things were still around. That was definitely a consideration when we were developing this.
Councilmember Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, all of you, for the presentation. I'll try to keep it quick. Thank you, Christian. I was going to say, in Chicago, I'm sure it is very, very late, so appreciate you sticking with us here tonight.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm super excited about this work. I love the work that we got to see that you have done for other communities. I think it excites me even more. This is work I've been excited about since we started talking about it, but I am even more excited after I've seen examples about how that has come together in other communities. So I'm excited about the proposed vendor, and I think particularly excited because of the community engagement piece, because Councilmember Page already touched on it. I won't ask a bunch more, but I'm excited about that. And I think there's potential value in that this is a company that doesn't have a preconceived notion and isn't already familiar with Mountlake Terrace, because they're really going to need to lean on that community engagement to shape the path forward. And our community knows who we are. We hear a lot from our community about what an amazing place we are. But I will tell you, our region still doesn't know who we are. And I'm always surprised at how often, I mean, when I moved to, like, my great-grandmother moved here, so I was familiar with Mountlake Terrace growing up, but literally it was the place my great-grandmother lived. When I moved here in 2008, I lived in Seattle and worked in Redmond, and people are like, "You're moving where?" And the folks that did know were like, "Oh, the meat store." So they were familiar with Double D Meats, but that was the extent of their knowledge about Mountlake Terrace. Now, like, people are generally, they at least know the name Mountlake Terrace because we have a light rail station. But I don't think that folks in the region, too many folks in the region at least, do not know how amazing this community is. And since Councilmember Woodard isn't here, I will name that he talks about us being a destination city often. And I love that because we really are. We have amazing folks who love living here, know what a great community is. We have great local businesses that have already, you know, put down their roots here, some for a long time, some more recently. But we're excited to grow that. And that only happens if folks know what an amazing place this is to be. And I'm surprised, like, I've been over in Edmonds, not in recent times, talking to business owners down there, and I'm like, we have amazing spaces in Mountlake Terrace, and they're like, "Oh, really?" Like, so I'm so excited about this work. I think our community will really rally around having a cohesive, like, brand identity for who we are as a community, and I think that they will be really excited to be part of that process. So I'm excited about the plan. I'm excited about the proposed organization doing the work, and just excited to move it forward. So thank you.
All right, anyone else? Oh, Mayor Pro Tem Wall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well said. Yeah, you know how excited I am about this. I've been asking for economic development and branding and marketing for 10 years in this city, and I'm so excited to have this proposal and us moving forward. This is, you know, we spent a lot of time talking about the economic development vitality strategy and adopting that. This is the key piece to making all of this all come together and work and being successful in our economic vitality strategy. Yeah, we talk about the image, you know, saying I, you know, grew up in Shoreline and you know, work with regional leaders and people, you know, there's either an outdated image of Mountlake Terrace or no image of Mountlake Terrace, and we need to change that. We are an amazing place. We need to tell the world, we need to tell our story, and that's what this effort is about, is pulling all, you know, what we've been talking about, our, you know, our comprehensive plan, our goals for the city, and being able to tell that story to, you know, the rest of the region in particular. You know, we see development happening. You know, we adopted our town center plan in 2008 and then updated in 2019. We were well ahead of the curve from other cities in doing that. Yet at the same time, we're seeing a lot of development occurring in Shoreline. We're seeing a lot of development occurring in Linwood, and it's not occurring here to the extent that we dreamed it would. And this is our opportunity to be able to tell the investors, tell the business community our story and bring them and attract them to here so that we can actually achieve our dreams of what we want Mountlake Terrace to be growing up, right, as we continue to develop. And I'm excited about All Together. I was going to say the same thing about Chicago, but thank you. I know it's getting late there. But excited about All Together. I think one of the key things, in addition to all the work that they've done and what we've seen their success has been in other areas, Jeff was telling me us earlier today about, you know, one of the cities still has that you worked with 20 years ago, still has the same branding in place that's successful. So, you know, talk about success, wondering about how, you know, the story about how well they do and how well it sells in the communities they've worked with. 20 years is a good run, right? So excited to be able to have that same run here in Mountlake Terrace. One of the other things that excites me about All Together is the work that they've done in suburban communities. So, you know, they work with Chicago, but the suburbs around Chicago and helping them be successful. That's the same situation that we're in is, we're in between some big cities that are getting a lot of attention. So being able to define us here in the middle and attracting the people around us to Mountlake Terrace is critical. And I think that experience that you guys have from all together is going to be very helpful in us being able to tell that story. So yeah, excited to be moving forward. I was going to also talk about FIFA and how this is a long-term strategy, right? This is our economic vitality strategy is a 5-year strategy. Branding is a longer-term marketing effort, and being able to know exactly how we're going to tell that story, establishing that base right here, right now through this effort is critical. Yet the timing is, when we look at the timing of June, July, we're rolling it out at the same time the people that are coming to this region. So it's perfect to be able to create that base right from when all the attention is coming to this area. So being able to tell that story as they're here is going to be really important, but also recognizing this is a long-term effort. But really excited to move forward with this. Thank you. Christian, thank you for, I don't know where the camera is.
Okay.
I see, I'm looking at you here, and then, but anyway, but Christian, really appreciate you being here with us tonight, and excited to get off the ground with this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a comment. I think this program and branding and analyzing our area would help so that in our town center, we don't just have a row of apartments. We have not just mixed use either. If we could analyze how to buy up some land, because we don't own it, and see if a developer or a company, big company wants to move in, that would be great. So I'm all for it. Thank you.
Thank you. I know our Mayor Pro Tem has been waiting a long time. A long time. All right. So anyone else before we say we're going to the next? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Christian.
Thank you for staying up
Night,
late.
everybody.
Okay, so next on our agenda is the presentation of the asset management practices of property management with our Recreation and Parks Director, Jeff Betts.
Okay, good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. I'm Jeff Betts, Recreation and Parks Director for the city. And with me as well is Floyd Garrigus. He's the Facilities Supervisor. And so we have a presentation to show you tonight. It's 57 slides, but we'll go fast. There's not really 57 slides, inside joke. There are less than that. But as mentioned, this is part of the asset management series. So if you remember that Public Works came in a few months ago and spoke to you about, I believe that one was stormwater, but we intend to continue on this and talk about different areas of the city and asset management in general. So the purpose of tonight is to discuss asset management and the asset management life cycle and how that plays into city government and specifically facilities. So this series highlights innovative and analytical and or technological techniques. So these techniques are being utilized across the city, or we hope they're going to be, in this case, to promote the efficient use of staff and financial resources. So today's presentation, though, we're going to focus on a technical energy audit that was performed by McKinstry in 2024. And we've alluded to this audit a few times in past presentations. If you remember, at the council retreat, we spoke about the Recreation Pavilion and some of these energy audit findings, but this is kind of a little broader of approach here. So if anybody recognizes that photo, that was City Hall before the previous City Hall that was sitting here. So this is when Mountlake Terrace was incorporated, but before that, the past structure was constructed. So I do not know the address of that facility, but I have texted a few people to ask them if they know exactly where that building was located at. To no response tonight, but so the goal, tonight's agenda, we're going to talk about council goals, the facility condition assessment itself, the facilities that McKinstry reviewed, the condition assessments that came back, and then also some financial budget impacts of those condition assessments, and then next steps. So council goals as related to this presentation is responsible governance to ensure desired levels of service. And additionally, kind of a sub-goal is to invest in systems and technology that enhance efficient and minimize risk, ensuring cost-effective service delivery. So that facility condition assessment from McKinstry took into the scope of work included a few different elements. So there was a visual inspection. So the team from McKinstry went to each facility and they took into account the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and the building envelope of each building. They, in that condition assessment, which is also an attachment, it's an executive summary that's an attachment to tonight's presentation, they go through some of the ratings, methods, and scoring, and then there's also an asset condition, industry life expectancy, the observed remaining life, and also some cost estimating. So the facilities that were reviewed include City Hall, the Pavilion, Operations Facility, the library, the clubhouse, and the police station. So this slide just shows the construction dates as well as square footage of each facility. And if you do have questions in the middle of the presentation, please ask them. I'm fine with that. And I brought Floyd along. Floyd will know almost every answer better than I will. He has a lot of detail. So the condition assessment, first of all, with City Hall, to highlight, there's 80 assets that we reviewed. And part of this process for the asset is that they tagged every single one of them. So they took this barcode and tagged them. And so that we hope that's going to help us in the future. But those assets were tagged. They also gave each asset a condition. So they did a 1 through 5 conditioning. So 1 is good shape, 5 is in really bad shape. So as you can see, the average asset condition for City Hall.
Hi, for the sake of us and everyone else listening, can you describe what an asset is?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll go through some of the assets here, but it could be, on this slide, you can see there's a fire sprinkler system or emergency lighting battery. It could be the roof. It could be HVAC units, anything, elements of the facilities that help it operate so we can operate, essentially. So those assets that we're talking about. Yes.
I have another question.
Ask, when you're looking at the new City Hall, it's new, right? So everybody thinks it's fine, but we've heard rumors about what's wrong with the building and different things, and I'm hoping people still remember what those were. How do we know if those have been checked?
So there are, so the issues that maybe you're referring to would be more of, are you talking about more structural issues? Or I'm not aware of any structural type issues with the facility, but there's always issues when you have a new building, especially when it comes to HVAC in the building intellect type systems that really take a lot of training and understanding how to utilize. And we are still trying to balance some of those things today. I still get emails at times trying to figure out how some of the systems work. And so it's a lot more technologically advanced what this system here at this building is than any of our other facilities. So there's a huge learning curve. There are some other things that were like some of the lighting issues that we've had that you still may see. There are some lights still on during the day in the parking lot. Has anybody ever noticed that? So those are all supposed to be on an eye that tells you when it's daylight and they would turn off. Well, they're on different circuits, and some of them are not things that we can change at this time, or they would take a lot of work to make changes to. So there are some things like that maybe you're referring to, but there aren't any major issues that I'm aware of at City Hall, unless you know something I don't.
I do not know.
Okay. So go ahead.
Sorry, Thank you, Madam Mayor. Let me ask, were you referring to like the punch list items from the developer? Okay. But like, yeah, like for instance, did we finally get all the punch list items from the initial development of the City Hall checked off? Are there still remaining punch list items or other items that may be an issue that you've raised?
Right, so there was a punch list that was put together by city staff as well as the architect and the construction administration team. And some of those things are more aesthetic type items that we checked off without, with how the contract ended and how we moved on at that point, there wasn't any recourse on that matter with them. But there was things that we did internally. So staff did take care of some of those items. We did hire a couple contractors to take care of a couple of roofing issues. And some of them, most of them are just code compliance issues, things that we took care of. But anything else you would not even know, because there are some of them were so aesthetic, they were very small to hold the contractor to the contract itself, but not anything that's going to be detrimental to the facility that you would notice. Absolutely. So average asset condition is 1.02, $0 for repair in years 1 through 5. Great news. Further out, there are going to be some things that wear out, so planning for those in the future is a great idea. And there are some different, I took a sampling of that executive summary where they list out the replacement items. I did not list them all on here. It would have been too long for each slide, but I just wanted to give you kind of just a sample of that.
Thanks, Mayor. Just regretting saying we can jump in anytime. I think quick, could you go back to the last slide? I guess I'm just curious as we look out for those future costs, are those, and I know we're talking about 6 to 10 years for this, but just as we move forward in the presentation, are those things that have typically been built into our budgets or no?
Well, we don't build out our budget 10 years out.
Right.
So no, but when we get there, we will know that these items are getting closer to replacement. And just, we want to plan for the worst, but if it's still operational or good shape, we definitely keep things moving and running, right? So, but yes, we will be planning for replacement and definitely the maintenance of those items to keep them running.
As they get into that 1 to 5 year
Absolutely.
range. Great, thank you.
Said because with our fiscal financial committee, one of the suggestion is building out a 10-year budget. And so just to address going forward and what Jeff just said.
So, and you'll notice, I'll point out on those sheets and on this, you can see there's 2 different columns. There's a capital budget column, there's an operating budget. And so they did split it out on there because under that threshold, I believe we changed the threshold to $10,000 last year for the capital budget threshold. So anything under that are things that we would replace with our operating budget. So the team would go out and purchase a unit heater, or we'd hire a contractor to do something like that if it's under $10,000. But if we're purchasing something over $10,000, like a water heater, then it triggers that capital investment threshold. And so that's why there's 2 columns here. Easy chart to explain. Not a lot of asset replacement necessary is the good news. Now to the recreation pavilion. So there were 71 assets that were charted. The average asset condition is 3.55. So there are a lot of them that are in the 5s, but there are some things that we've done to reduce some of those assets as we replace them, get those numbers closer to 1 as much as we can. So the years 1 through 5 repair replacement is almost 2.4 million. And then year 6 through 10 is about 500,000 on here. And so this, as I mentioned, this study was done a year ago. So we're another year into this industry life remaining. You could see, for instance, maybe the return fan is negative 26 years past its life. And so, but as we're not going to just replace it when it says it's time to go, we're going to keep things running as long as we can. But it's good to be prepared in case something happens, to have the budget authority to do that. So this is the net present value. So what those dollar amounts are per year. And then the next slide will show you kind of how that accumulates. And there's one more point. This is just purchasing the whatever it is. If we're going to go buy an HVAC unit, that's the cost of it. It doesn't count if we need to do any design work or construction administration, or even, some of them, even if we're going to hire the person, a company to do it instead of doing it in-house, sometimes that's going to even double the cost. So, we're not going to mount a rooftop unit ourselves in-house. That's something we're going to hire a contractor to do, and those things are very expensive. So this doesn't include any of the soft costs, as we say. So this is that accumulated value. As we don't invest, things continue to pile up on you. And then just a few images. There are a couple images. There are some more in that executive summary for each section, but these are the photos they included. So the operations facility, there are 52 different assets, and that asset condition average is 3.69. That facility is aging as well. We've owned it solely. We purchased from Linwood about 15 years ago. And so there are things that we've replaced as we went, but there are a lot of aging parts there. The roof is 18 years past its life. The parking lot is seen better days. So some of these elements can be very small, like the fire alarm main panel, or things that, that we would budget for and take care of. But there are some things that are very expensive. So this is the net present value for the operations facility, and then kind of the accumulated value with no investment. And here's a photo of that parking lot. Just all the heavy equipment driving over it just needs some new asphalt. And then the rooftop unit for that operations facility, looking a little weathered there, potentially. So the library, 33 different assets were cataloged with an average asset condition of 3.64. It's a little over $700,000 in years 1 through 5, and then about $508,000 for years 6 through 10. And so for construction project, if you're going to do all that at once, obviously it's going to be much more than 1.2 million of those two. That's just the equipment cost to do. So, and this is one of the projects that we're trying to tackle with the federal agenda and then also the state agenda, and trying to get funding secured to replace some of the elements at that library. So here's that accumulated value with no investment. And then some relevant photos of the roof as well as the ACU3 unit. So the Mickey Corso Community Clubhouse had 36 different assets cataloged, and its average condition is 3.67. So about $700,000 almost in years 1 through 5. There are 2 units next week that will be replaced on this list as part of a Snohomish County grant that we received. So one of the actual heating units and then also one of the cooling units outdoors, the combo of those 2 would be replaced with that dollar amount. So a little bit of work done on that. So this is that net present value, and then the accumulated here. And just a few photos you could see of the roof, and then some of the siding. The siding needs repair. It's good cedar siding, but it just needs, some replacement here or there and some work. Then police. Now this is completely outdated since we just did a roof and rooftop unit at that facility, as well as the backup generator that's going to be installed on Monday. So a lot of progress made on this facility, but 50 different assets cataloged with the average asset condition at 2.56. And that's taking into account the new addition as well. So years 1 through 5 was about 1.2 million, and then further out, there's a little bit less. So a couple of different items on this list too. The building automation system is done with this project. The fire alarm main panel is something that we need to try to budget for. And then the rooftop unit was replaced. So lots of progress there. All right, accumulated value, and then just some photos. And this is all gone now. These photos are replaced by new equipment and wood that's not rotten. So this is just a couple of slides that we talk about that budget impact, and I'm really just showing the assets that are in that 5 condition. And this slide is just the pavilion's number of 5s. And so we have the roof, air handling unit, automation systems, air handling, roofing, things like that. And then we have the police station, a couple elements, the roofing is replaced, so that would come off. And then some elements, different items, assets on the Mickey Corso Community Clubhouse. And this is just a different way to look at the different equipments and systems themselves. And it's like these are some of the costs of the first 5-year annual capital expenditure costs of plumbing, HVAC, electrical, exterior enclosure, and roofing. And those equipment systems sorted that fashion. So next steps. So those asset IDs that McKinstry put on there have barcodes. And so internally, staff have been working on researching and identifying asset management software it's already budgeted that we could utilize to transition those barcodes into something that's useful and that we can track and be able to have that data at our fingertips, so to speak. So staff have phones and different ways to connect to that data when they're out in the field to be able to log, different maintenance that they've performed, find parts, or know when they've replaced things, to catalog that information. Instead, in the past, we're sitting around a room with 4 of us trying to remember the last time we did something. So that's not a very efficient way, but when you have people that have been here for 38 years, they have a lot of knowledge. So we need to get that knowledge in this asset management software. And so in addition to identifying that software, then we would need to train and onboard staff because it will not work if staff do not use it. So that is essential. And the benefits would be just really having that, an efficient preventative maintenance plan, having that work history also, and the ability for staff and all staff at all facilities, the stakeholders of the buildings, to have that work order request, to be able to send something through the system that, hey, could you fix this, or this is making a noise, and then we can respond to that through the system and reply that something's been done. Right now, it's an email work order system that's a lot harder to track and quantify than a system that would be built for something like this. So that is what we're moving forward to, and that's why we did that McKinstry project.
I got a question for you on that topic you was just at. I think I asked this question back in April. Do we have a process in place that allows you to know by schedule a preventive maintenance for all these things that you're talking about, like the high backs, et cetera, so that instead of, as you said, waiting or wondering when the last time we did something, or waiting for a staff member to say, this is broken, do we have a digital, PMI program that allows, because that's important. That's where your cost comes down, when you know that you got this sort of thing in place, so that you can go look and see, even if, internally you think I don't have to, because it costs a lot less money to go do that than to send a team to go fix something that's broken that you didn't know was going to be broken.
Yeah, we utilize, I know that the team utilizes Outlook and Microsoft tools and their phones as much as possible, but having a unified system that is an asset management or work order system would do just what you're saying. That's exactly why we want that system.
Anyone else? Councilmember Salmore?
I'm just going to kind of go off the question Aaron asked. So in the next 1 to 5 years, I believe if I added it up correctly, and it wasn't looking at these pages here, it's about $7 million. And then how much of that is built into our 25-26 budget?
So we have operating costs built into our budget to handle some of the smaller elements. But to handle that large dollar amount, it's not possible with our operating budget. And we've had some large capital improvement projects that we've put forward, like the police station. That is one of the things that will knock off a huge, element of that $7 million, a $1.4 million project. So that is a huge step that council took when they approved that and moved that forward to get that done. But the other projects, they take a large investment. So we're looking for state and federal partners to help us with those.
So yeah, that was my next question. But right before that, I think it's another $3 million for the 6 to 10 years, and we know our budget within the increased cost and everything going up. So just at the little bit of math I did, it's $11 million without replacing the pool. how realistic is it to get that much money from grants to be able to get enough money to do all these different repairs? And where does that put us in 10 years?
All good questions. I'm not sure I have the answers to that. Realistically, the main funding source the city uses for things like this is REIT. And the amount of REIT that we collect would not fund that amount of money, right? There's many other projects, right, that the city needs to utilize REIT for, including, street construction projects and parks facilities, other things like that. So, yeah, I think that we need partners, and grants is the only way that we can combine with our existing funding sources to have some movement on that end.
So my next question on that is, we're investing all this into marketing and all sorts of certain things. How much are we investing in hiring a person that's just specifically with grants? And because I know it takes a while to learn how to be a good grant writer and different things, but if we have a really good person doing that, we get our money back, right? And so in the years past, we've lost out on some big opportunities and different things because we didn't either have enough time to have a grant writer, or we missed some deadlines. How much are we putting towards looking at helping? Because I know we can't just rely, okay, Jeff, it's all on you to go get the grants. That's a lot of work. And so I'm just wondering if there's a dedicated person that we have here.
We don't have a dedicated person, and my personal opinion is that it's more effective to have people who have knowledge of the subject matter applying for the grants. It would be hard for somebody that doesn't know a lot about that area to try to apply for them and try to be knowledgeable in those discussions or grant meetings. I think it's more efficient to have somebody that is in that area, to understand what is required and what's necessary. So that's my opinion. I mean, I think that staffing levels are something that is a concern if you're trying to expand your grant application level. So if there's existing workloads for those staff, that's what's hard to kind of go outside of that area to apply for more grants, right? But we've been pretty successful. So I think that we can continue down that path, but most grants require matching funding. And so that's kind of where we run into some problems, is trying to find matching funding, but we keep on going.
And do we have an existing schedule of all those grants?
Absolutely.
Because I was just talking to somebody in a city, and they've gotten over $1.2 billion in the last 10 years. And, and I look, and part of it's the highway costs, which was $500 million. But I look at all the different things that they've brought in, and I know it has to do with size and different things like that and the matching money. But are we going to have matching money? Have we set enough money aside to do that, and can we?
I mean,
in the next 5 years, in the next 6 to 10 years,
so
because of all our reserves that we're using, we'll have enough?
I don't know. It really depends on council priorities, because there's a limited amount of funding sources, right? So there's, our internal funding for facilities is essentially REIT. It's essentially what there is. And so there's always going to be finite resources for everything that the city wants to do. And so you can't really dedicate one source completely towards, one division or project necessarily. So it has to be spread out. But those are all council decisions. And, as the city is able to kind of develop more, there will be more REIT funding, there will be more tax base. And so those things could all help.
And I'm not trying to go out, but I know you say it's all council decision, but we have to be educated on in order to make a decision, because we rely on city staff to educate us on that. And one of the things we've done is limped along with the pool, and it sounds like we may have to limp along on other things. I know we've done that with the clubhouse, but in the future, there's going to be more clubhouse issues going on down there. And just being so close to the water and where it's built on. But I think sometimes we're going to have to make some very tough choices, and the pool's going to be one of them. And like Aaron had said before, how much are people willing to pay to replace that pool? So I'm asking all these questions because it's going to be tough in the future to decide a lot of this.
Anyone else? Councilmember Murray?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you both for being here. I appreciate the presentation. I think it's important for us, I think to Councilmember Sonmore's point, you know, the council has to understand what the current state is in order to be able to effectively plan for the future. And I will name that it is a sobering report that makes planning for the future feel very challenging. You know, I think it's one of the reasons that we are where we are. You know, deferred maintenance didn't happen because there wasn't a desire to do that maintenance, but there are finite resources, and some of that maintenance has been deferred for a very long time, as we, I think, have reduced investment in public infrastructure year over year over year for many, many years. It makes maintaining what we have, let alone adding to what we have, really challenging. And so that is where we are, and that is real. And we are having, I think, lots of important conversations about our budget, and I look forward to continue to have those. But the first step is staff making sure that we understand current state, and I think this is incredibly helpful, and do appreciate all of staff's work to both keep us informed about where things are at, as well as to look for more effective ways to manage the maintenance and replacement cycles. I think the asset tracking is great, and look forward to continuing to hear more about kind of where you land on that. But I think particularly we've been so lucky to have so many staff who have been here for such a long time and are such wealths of knowledge in terms of what we've done and what we're doing. I appreciate, though, that like as we think about succession planning in the future, you know, I hope we continue to have staff who want to serve their entire careers here, or significant portions of it. But I appreciate that you're creating systems and structure that helps support whatever the future holds in terms of staff. So thank you for this, even though it is a tough presentation to receive.
Okay.
Is it okay if I say something?
Sure,
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
Mayor Pro Tem, Council, good evening. I just wanted to say something that we keep things running. They're old. We get parts. We fix them. We'll keep them running as long as we can. With a program like this, like you guys were talking about, we'll be able to track work orders when they're finished. We'll be able to keep an inventory of critical parts, numbers. We'll be able to track when they were replaced, how long they lasted. I'm excited. We got younger kids now on the team. They're really more tech motivated. So whenever, like when Barry and I were doing it, we had our vendors, we'd call up, we'd get the things coming. They whip out their phones. Oh, we got it right here. So with a platform like this would work perfect for them. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Well, I know that, you know, when I got on the council, it was a recession at that time. So we had to hold off on a lot of stuff. And then things got better and we started doing things. And then we were really on the go. And then COVID came. And so, you know, you just can't predict the future. And I know that that's one of the reasons why a lot of the deferred things were during my time, at least. But it's come to the point where we can't defer it anymore. We really have to do something. And so, you know, this is an eye-opener. And it's you know, if you want a pavilion, you're going to have to do something about it. If you want a city hall, you're going to have to do something about it. We just can't just keep our heads in the sand. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And for the people who are waiting a long time, we're finally to your section, which is the review of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Strategic Plan with our Deputy City Manager, Carolyn Hope. Do we have enough?
All right, good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. Happy to be here tonight. I'm with colleagues from the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission. We have Chair Matsuda, Vice Chair Courtney, and Commissioner Francisco with me tonight. So we are here to talk about Together We Thrive, a strategic plan for advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this will be an overview for you. So tonight we're here to give you, like I said, an overview of the plan. We would love to hear your feedback on it. And we also want to promote the public comment period that is ongoing right now and will be open until October 3rd. So generally speaking, we will be talking about the various components of the plan, the next steps, and we'll have time for Q&A at the end. And this plan aligns with a couple of the goals that the council has laid out in their strategic plan, as well as the mission of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission. And some of the specific goals that City Council has set through ordinance in developing the commission include embracing diversity through action, education, celebrations, and guidance, assuring an accessible, safe, welcoming, and inclusive government and community, and eliminating and preventing all forms of discrimination. So we had these goals in mind as we worked on the plan. So going back in time, we were, the council in 2022 allocated some funding from ARPA to support the commission's work in developing a work plan and working with a consultant to figure that out and to pay for some other expenses. We came back a year later with a scope for that, how to use those funds, which you approved, and we moved forward with hiring some consultants to help us with that process. Last year, we came back and we shared the internal assessment results with you and our plan for doing some community outreach. And I wanted to take a moment here and acknowledge the many people that were involved in this work. We have the council who originally developed the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission, and those of you who came on later who've supported that work. We have commissioners who were part of the original commission and many new commissioners. They've been instrumental, especially in the community outreach and in providing ideas in the plan. And then we have a new Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Staff Committee that was formed about a year ago, and they've been very active and supportive in the work. We also, as I mentioned, hired consultants, the VITA Agency and Equity Through Action, who are very helpful. So really the purpose of this plan is to identify ways that the city can be more equitable in providing access to all of our community members and helping folks feel more welcome and included in the community. We also have this internal component, as I mentioned, about what we can do to provide staff with the tools and skills they need to serve our diverse community. I'll hand it over to Commissioner Benita Francisco.
So I get to talk about definitions and some numbers. So in context of this plan, we have the definition of diversity. So it refers to the appreciation of various backgrounds that comprise a community or other grouping based on cultures, ethnicities, gender, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, disability, and more. The list goes on. So what does equity mean? Equity means people should be treated uniquely, giving adjustments needed for their different circumstances. So a picture's worth 1,000 words. We can see that here in this image. It shows a visual of what each of the terms mean. Inequality, equality, equity, and then justice changes over time. So our definitions. Inclusion is the proactive removal of barriers that hinder full participation and success. So some specific examples of that might include flyers in other languages, childcare at public meetings so parents and families can join and participate in our community, invite new groups to apply for jobs or contracts and increase our community inclusion. Demographics. So to achieve the goal of ensuring that all community members have equitable access to city services, feel welcomed, included in the community, the city has to understand the population as it changes. And the city government also needs to understand our residents' unique experiences and other expectations. So over this last 70 years, the demographics of the city have changed, and we continue to become more diverse as the city grows. Over the last 25 years, the city's population has grown 20%. Since 2010, the group of people who are 65 years or older have increased by more than 50%, and the number of children is slightly dropping. The number of veterans living in Mountlake Terrace has decreased 50% between 1990 and 2024. The number of people with disabilities has fluctuated over time. The census data has recorded this information differently over the years, but the data shows a spike between 1990 and 2000, and then a drop in 2024 to 2,268 people who are identified as having a disability. And since 1990, the number of people in our city living in poverty has increased by 37%. The number of people who live in Mountlake Terrace who are foreign-born has also rose 61% since 1990. That's the blue bar. I missed a page, didn't I? I did. Sorry. I jumped ahead. Economists recommend that people spend 30% or less of their income on housing, including their basic utilities. So in 1990, mortgage holders averaged a spending of 25% of their income, and renters spent about 20% of their income on housing. Those percentages stayed pretty consistent until about 2024, and around that time, the average homeowner was spending 36% of their income on mortgage alone, and the average renter was spending 23% on their income on rent. And since 1990, the average home value in Mountlake Terrace has increased by 82.5%, while the average household income has increased by only 65%. Now we get to talk about foreign-born people. All right, so the number of people who live in Mountlake Terrace who were foreign-born rose by 61%, so that's the blue bars. There was a large increase of people who speak languages other than English at home between 1990 and 2024, about 67%. Between 1990 and 2000, 46% of people had an increase had limited English proficiency, but the number has remained relatively stable. The data was not collected in the 2010 census, that's the gray bars. Today, about 24% of our population speaks a language other than English at their home, and about 6% of the population identify as having limited English proficiency. That's the green bars. Should have put holes in these, then I would know which side I'm supposed to be on. So there have been a slight increase in the number of people with high school degrees or higher, just over 7% over 34 years. There's a larger increase in the number of residents who have a bachelor's degree or higher, and that's 23% since 1990. All right, so I was excited about this one. So this chart is about race. In 1960, the city was not large enough to collect data on race. In the years that followed, the category of race changed. In 1970, the only races people could select on the census was white, black, or other. And then between 1980 and 2024, the categories broadened, but some of the groups changed over the years. So for example, there used to be a category called Asian or Pacific Islander, and then it was changed to Asian with a separate category for Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander. In 2000, people were able to choose a category called 2 or more races, which are not broken out any other way than 2 or more races. The largest racial group has been and continues to be white or Caucasians, with about 39% of the total current population. The second largest racial group is Hispanic, comprising about 17% of our population. This is the fastest growing racial group since 1990. The Hispanic population has grown in Mountlake Terrace by 91%. The third largest racial group is comprised of people who identify with 2 or more races, and that's 11% of our population. The fourth largest group is Asian, and today's Asian people represent 10% of our population. It's the third fastest racial group, growing 81% since 1990.
Thank you so much, Vanita. Lots of numbers. I hope that you have time to digest that. It's rather interesting, in my opinion. But so here we are. We're going to talk about the internal analysis of our city operations. Basically, again, how staff operate, our internal policies and procedures. The consultants reviewed several internal documents with an equity lens. They interviewed city staff, elected officials, commissioners, and asked about their knowledge and their experiences related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, any concerns that they might have had. They also supported staff in the development of an internal diversity, equity, and inclusion survey and helped us culminate the results of that. And they provided training for staff, commissioners, and elected officials in diversity, equity, and inclusion and sought feedback afterwards. So the summary of what we heard includes that city officials could use more diversity, equity, and inclusion training, that we do experience discrimination, harassment, and microaggressions within our organization, that staff desire inclusive leadership, accountability, and clear communications, and a strong team culture, that we need to review policies, procedures, and practices as we develop them with look at them with an equity lens to really think about who might be impacted by those decisions. And that, most importantly, staff believe in diversity, equity, inclusion, and that it's important for our internal work culture and for the community.
And now we'll discuss how we engage with the community and what we learned about their experiences in the city and using city services. We reached out to the community in many different ways, including listening sessions in 2021, 2 different online surveys between 2021 and 2025, community conversations over the last 2 years, and continual engagement with the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission and Staff Committee. The general points of agreement from the listening sessions and surveys were: Mountlake Terrace is inclusive, welcoming, and accepting of people with diverse backgrounds. Mountlake Terrace is a safe place to live. Our city is supportive of the well-being of all people, and diversity, equity, and inclusion is important to the community. There were many comments about the importance of building trust and relationship with communities listed here. And they encourage the city to find new methods of engaging with them. Safety is a broad term, and it's important for the commission to understand what it means to the community in order to influence change. The community identified many themes that can be summarized as diverse business in a clean, low-crime neighborhood with welcoming signs, cultural festivities and events representing communities within Mountlake Terrace, designed in partnership with those communities. These, in particular, make people feel safe, welcome, and connected with others. Well-designed, active transportation infrastructure. And next, the commission asked, what does diversity, equity, and inclusion look like to you? The themes included allowing all people to have opportunities, the city council representing the demographics of the new residents, and the city is accountable to DEI commitments. There are many suggestions for the DEI Commission's role within the city as listed here. We are making headway in many of these items and look forward to continuing the work with staff, city council, and our new community ambassadors. Applications accepted through October 3rd, exclamation point. When asked about what barriers people face in their lives in Mountlake Terrace, we learned that many people face physical barriers to accessing places and buildings. and that not everyone has access to a computer to participate in online meetings and engagement. Interpretation may also be needed at meetings and events. Some people cannot access city services during their normal working hours, so cannot get customer service that they need. There is demand for affordable housing, as we know, and a need for temporary shelters in this area. And infrastructure improvements make it safer to walk or bike to transit. Other barriers people face include some people feel that our recreation programs should be expanded to meet the needs of different parts of our population. There is a desire to offer diversity, equity, and inclusion training for community members and staff to help stop bigotry and discrimination and systemic racism. City staff should reflect the community demographics to better understand their needs. And community relationships could be improved through cultural events. Now, what do people like about Mountlake Terrace? Yes. Right one? Right. What do people like about Mountlake Terrace? Mountlake Terrace events. They feel welcomed here. We're forward-thinking. City is trying to find ways to better connect with its residents. Police Citizens Academy, and now called the Mountlake Terrace Community Academy. And through discussions and questions about what racism and anti-racism means to people, we developed this list of actions for the commission and city to lean on in anti-racism work. To name a few, evaluate each action as a way to remove racism from our organization. Be aware of bias and work toward unbiased decisions. Acknowledge and address trauma that people may have faced in their lives. Promote respect and dignity for all. Create safe places for people of color and others who are targeted by bigotry. And remove barriers to make things easier for people to access services. Thank you.
I'm going to talk about our community conversations because the commission found it was hard to gather input about diversity, equity, and inclusion topics, especially from people of color, the LGBTQAI community, and this disabled community, partly because we were still working on relationships with these groups of residents. So the commission took a fresh approach and worked on meeting with groups of people on their terms, using personal invitations, to have a conversation with the goal of building new, authentic relationships with community members to learn their experiences in the city of Mountlake Terrace and how the city can better serve their residents and visitors. With these, while these conversations were not specifically asking the types of questions that we asked during the listening sessions and surveys, there were opportunities for people to tell us about their experience living, working, worshiping, visiting, or attending school here. Here's a summary of what we heard in the first conversations, the first few, and we plan to continue to build on our work here, creating new relationships. The Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission invited community groups, spiritual organizations, and the broader community to conversation. The goal was to listen to people's experiences in Mountlake Terrace and interacting with the city government to build relationships and to help people find answers to their questions. Between December 2024 and March 2025,
Mayor Pro Tem Wall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We need to extend the meeting. How much time do you think? Right. Yeah, and then we'll extend further if necessary. But I move to extend the meeting until 10:25.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We are extended.
So between December 2024 and March 2025, the city hosted the following conversations with the Masjid Umar Al Farouk, the mosque, cops and clergy, with the greater community, and at the Mountlake Terrace Library, partnering with Snohomish County Health Department, we hosted one that was presented in English and Spanish at an open house. Here's what we heard. You feel welcome when someone greets you, smiles, waves, says hello, or people see you. You feel welcomed when a business welcomes you with signs, the salesperson greets you, maybe remembers your name or what you normally order, and they are respectful. You feel welcomed when your neighbors talk to you, invite you, and include you. You feel welcome when the neighborhood feels welcoming, it is clean, well lighted, maybe there's flowers and plants and trees like we talked about earlier. People feel safe from traffic, and the city is easy to navigate. You feel welcomed when there are events and community activities that are inclusive and offer opportunities to meet people. You feel welcome when your voice is heard, when places are accessible, and when you feel respected. And what do people love about Mountlake Terrace? People love that Mountlake Terrace is walkable, has access to light rail and bus transportation, and has many community events. People also love the recreation pavilions programs like the dance classes, childcare and day camps, and of course, the aquatic programs at the pool. And people love that our police are responsive and it makes them feel safe. The community loves the Snow Mountlake Terrace Library and that it is conveniently located in the campus here, and that it's a safe place with a multicultural vibe. And everyone loves the shops and restaurants in Mountlake Terrace. And many people appreciate the small town feel, like feeling connected to neighbors at approachable fun events and living in relatively quiet neighborhoods. And people appreciate that the city puts effort into reaching out to the community. And that the city is continually maintaining infrastructure in the city like roads and sewers and water lines. And of course, everybody loves the parks.
Thank you so much, Teresa. So now we get to the action plan. So what we've heard are ideas and recommendations, and we needed to put this into an action plan where we can track what we are going to do, who's going to do it, the status and performance measures. The action plan is divided into a couple of sections, including internal policies, city operations, and improving community access to city government. So just a summary here, there's a lot more detail in the plan, but for the internal operations, we had some recommendations on updating our personnel policies, which is in progress, and you'll see that later this year. Maintaining a budget to fund diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Providing more consistency in the application of policies, discipline, and appreciation of staff. Practicing inclusive leadership, and succession planning and training. And a couple more in that category, updating our purchasing policies to encourage diverse suppliers and contractors, and establishing more collaboration between the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission and Staff Committee for alignment in the work that we have laid out here. So next we're moving on to improving community access to city government, and this is where most of the action items are laid out. So a couple here, sharing information about city services for financial assistance with low-income households in multiple languages. We do that a little bit, we could do better. Following community engagement strategies that we outlined in our new community engagement plan, making sure that people most impacted by decisions are invited to the decision-making process. revising the city code to limit the term of service for commissioners and council to provide more opportunities for others and bring new ideas forward. Providing more opportunities to build community trust and address community members' sense of safety and increase intercultural communication. And helping residents understand how to learn about the civic process. We also have action items related to informing residents about how they can share their feedback with the city, whether it's elected officials or staff. There is an action item to include gender-neutral restrooms in all city buildings, to recruit more bilingual staff, particularly in customer service roles, to evaluate existing and proposed policies, plans, codes, and programmatic decisions with an equity lens. Next, we have improving accessibility for disabled people, including the physically disabled, intellectually disabled, and folks with other types of disabilities like hearing and vision. To continue to provide more policy support and incentives and other things that a city can do to promote affordable housing. To improve our outreach and communications to people who have limited English proficiency, and to offer training on how to apply for a city job or a city contract to communities that typically don't get those opportunities. The next set includes consider co-creating an ancestral land acknowledgement and other actions to support our local Indigenous community in coordination with them. To host training about diversity, equity, and inclusion with our community. To encourage more cultural programs that are designed in collaboration with people who represent the groups that we're celebrating to ensure proper representation. To provide more support services for the unhoused people in our community, including social workers and places to stay. And to evaluate, as we mentioned earlier, programs at the Recreation Pavilion that might better represent our growing culturally diverse community. Okay, here we are. So right now, there is not a request for additional funding to move forward with these action items. We do have a lot of work that can be done internally. We do have some pre-budgeted money for, training and things like that. We may come forward in the next budget cycle with some additional requests to support this work, as is one of the action items, to continue funding diversity, equity, and inclusion. Next, we also just, again, want to reiterate that this plan is up on our website. We have a news release going out soon. We are also translating the executive summary and the action plan into Spanish, and the online survey will be in English and Spanish as well, but right now it is up in English. And really encouraging folks to provide some comments through this online survey that we have. Just getting to have people give feedback on the particular outwardly facing action items, and then an opportunity to provide general comments as well. So that comment period will end in early October, and then the commission will meet and they will review a revised plan that incorporates the major themes that we hear from the comment period. And hopefully we will have a recommendation to you by your November 6th meeting, where you can review and potentially vote on the plan. And that's our presentation. Happy to have discussion or answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Councilmember Page first.
Okay, thank you. Just a quick question and a comment. You got people have until October 3rd to make comments. Given the population number in the city, do you have a targeted goal of people that will respond? And if not, say for instance, you only get 400, is that enough? Given the fact we got almost 25,000 people? That's the question.
Yeah, this is a internal online poll. It's not a statistically valid survey. It's pretty unlikely that we'll get 300 or 400 responses. We'll be happy with what we get. We are doing a lot of marketing. Sienna's been super supportive in helping me get the word out, and our commissioners always do a great job as well.
And the comment is this, that I applaud the work that's gone into this. It's a lot of years of work with a lot of different people. And when I think of what the goal here is, what I was thinking in the back of my mind is to understand me is not to fear me. And that is what you all are trying to do for the residents here. There's so many people that are afraid of City Hall. There's so many people that are afraid to talk to the council or come to the front desk. There are people who won't even come into this building. They'll stop at the thing and drop their bills in because they don't know City Hall and they're afraid of City Hall. And then you extend that outside of City Hall, and there are people, various cultures that don't talk to each other because they don't understand each other. I know Councilmember Wall is always talking about, let's have these cultural pop-up events so that people can see that they have no reason to be afraid. They have a lot of reason to enjoy one another. And this strategic plan that you're working on and that you've put together, to me, that's what the theme looks like here. You know, just get to know, eliminate the fear, and make the community stronger. So I applaud the work that all of you've done, and you should, thank yourselves for what you've had to do and how you had to get here. So well done.
Okay, now we have Mayor Pro Tem Wall. Was there another hand? Oh, I didn't see yours.
I know he likes to talk last.
Oh, okay.
I was going to say, I'm not sure that I'm usually succinct, although I probably will be tonight. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for all of the work that you've put in. I've had a chance to see this a lot over the last couple of years as your liaison, but I think we have landed in a really great place. I appreciate the extensive community engagement that went into developing the plan. I feel like the plan, I'm excited to hear what the community has to say, and I think we have been doing that throughout the process, and I think that has led us to a really comprehensive and representative plan, and I'm really proud of us for continuing this work, even when it took maybe longer than we initially planned, when it has been challenging. I commend this council, I commend staff, I commend our DEI commission for continuing the course and really staying true to our values and our mission as a city. I think what I love the most is just the name of the plan, Together We Thrive, right? I think that represents exactly what we collectively hope to achieve as a community. We want a community where we are able to come together and folks can thrive as individuals and collectively as a community. And I think that so much of this work is already being done. And I will also applaud you for not waiting until this plan is done and approved to move, I think, the needle in so many spaces. But it is nice to have a plan, right? And that helps to make sure that this work continues long past any of us, hopefully. And so just appreciate you setting this foundation and precedent and all of the work that's gone into it, and excited to get the feedback from the community and move forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Now,
Can I just ask where you came up with the questions for the surveys? And if you said the city has to be committed to all the DEI commitments, and people say yes on more affordable housing, how are we going to make that commitment?
So the survey is basically, it's the action plan for the outwardly facing actions that we just went through. And it's just asking whether they agree or disagree with that proposed action. And then there's a comment box that's for any other kind of comment they have about the plan. So if everybody, because a lot of times we put a lot of weight on these surveys, and so if everybody says they provide general, neutral,
restrooms in all the city buildings, and we don't have the funding to do that. How do we do that?
Yeah, and I think in the plan, we talk about the schedule, we talk about what next steps are. And
We're
there's
getting more money?
for all of the different action steps. So some of the action steps could be accomplished in the next 2 years, and some will take longer. And so certainly making capital improvement changes will take longer. I mean, there's certain buildings that have facilities that might be easy to convert, and there's other buildings that don't. So yes, I think it's just a matter of making sure the timelines in the plan meet the financial ability of the city to do so.
All right, now can we go to Council, Mayor Pro Tem Wall?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, thank you. Great plan. You know, I guess this is another one that we've been talking about for a long time, actually. And in fact, legislative history, it actually goes back to, what, 2018, 19, when we first started having conversations and we adopted or established the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission. And then in 2020, when we started talking about the need for a strategic plan to put in place, and when we finally got around to budgeting legislative history 2022, getting something in the established in the budget and being able to move forward. So really excited about having this plan come forward and giving us some clear direction as to what we need to do to you know, move forward and move these efforts forward, and really excited about a lot of the recommendations in here. The one thing that I'd love to see more on is the community celebrating diversity and you know, events to talk about, you know, cultural or any of the different areas that we wanted to, you know, just celebrate who we are as a community and what makes up our community, all the different cultures and, you know, the list of that goes on and more, right? But finding opportunities for and events that really help tell the story and show who we are to the community, because that's, you know, getting back to what makes us feel welcome. You know, there are a lot of things that those series of slides that we as a city can be doing or incorporating into events that we already have, and making. I'd love to see some recommendations on in that category as well. Just talking about how we can celebrate who we are. But overall, just really thrilled that we're moving forward and we have a great plan to start with, and love to expand on that, actually. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Well, thank you. Thank you for being this late with us. Okay, so we're going to move on now to the review of the next September 18th meeting agenda. And if no one has any objections to that one, we'll just move on to council comments. Are there any council comments? Councilmember Murray?
Thank you, Mayor. I feel like somebody should plug this weekend's events. I don't think we've talked about them tonight, so we've got good stuff coming up this weekend. So hopefully folks join us for National Day of Service at 9 o'clock, meeting over at the Sonics Court by the Rec Pavilion, and for our first ever Luminaria walk down at Lake Ballinger at 7 p.m. I think it's going to be a fun day full of enjoying our parks and public spaces, and hope to see folks there. And I think that's it. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. And if I don't see any other hands going up because, oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Ryan.
Hi, I think we didn't recognize that today is September 11th.
Patriot Day.
Yeah, and so I don't know, we didn't really say anything or prepare anything. And I had a meeting tonight, so I couldn't go to the Mukilteo event. So they had the mayor speaking, and things like that. So, yeah, I'm kind of speechless on it, you know, it's kind of tough thinking about attack on our country like that. So I just wanted to make sure that people thought about it.
We did.
So thank you.
Next year will be the 25th, and it will not be on a Thursday night, so we can celebrate. Excuse me. So anyone else for council comments? If not, we're going to make it on our deadline time, and I'm going to adjourn the meeting. We're adjourned.